Live stream microphone check 2 3.
Okay, folks, good evening. We are officially locked in a metaphorical sense. Welcome to the Town Hall in the City of Colchester and for tonight's Scrutiny Panel meeting. We have got a very busy agenda, so I will
One, two, 1, 2. That one worked.
It's back. 1 2.
The leader had pulled his plug out.
Okay, we start again. This doesn't often happen.
Sorry, do you mind if I just check? So that's definitely there. Yours is working.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry about that, folks, but it is very important that we make sure the microphones are working in the interests of inclusivity for everyone's access needs. So, welcome members of the public, great to see you. Welcome folks at home. We are, of course, streaming live and will be available to watch in the future. There are no practice evacuations or expected alarms tonight, but if you do hear one, then please make your way downstairs via the main stairs or the side stairs and rendezvous at the rear of the town hall in the car park where you'll be looked after. Discreet use of mobile phones is okay. If we can try and turn the audio functions off, that would be helpful. I'm Councillor Darius Laws. I'm the chairman of this wonderful committee that does really good work, and I'm also a councillor for the villages north of Colchester. And we will have introductions from the rest of the room after just acknowledging that we have a substitute tonight. So, Sam, who are you here for, Sam?
Shall I start? Good evening, everybody. Councillor Sam McCarthy representing Shrub End Ward and substituting for Vanessa Moffat.
Good evening, Councillor Paul Smith, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Yeah, Councillor, hello. Yeah, Councillor Claire Osborne, Shrub End Ward, thank you.
Councillor Kayleigh Ribbingale, representing Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Thomas Rowe, representing Rural North Ward.
Dennis Willets, Lexton and Braeswick Ward.
Lucy Bredman, Strategic Director.
David King, Leader of the Council.
Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
Chris Pearson, Cabinet Member for Economic Growth and Transformation.
Thanks, everyone. We will probably have a break this evening about 7:30. We have to do that. I will be racing through this, and I will ask members if we can try and keep our prose to a brief and concise nature. There's a lot to get through, and I'm really conscious that we've got a very busy public gallery, which is wonderful. I understand many of the contributors are here tonight for an item later on the agenda, so whilst I'm really cool with everyone staying for that item, if for whatever reason you cannot stay and you want to have your say early on, then we're about to get to that moment, and what you say will be noted and brought up in the main discussions. Okie dokie. Urgent items, we have none. Declarations of interest, councillors, we have none. We have no minutes to approve this time, and so I'll move on to the general have your say. And I have Sir Bob Russell, down. And so we'll take Sir Bob.
I brought a visual aid. That's how the river should look at Northbridge, a listed building. Those cottages, listed buildings, in a conservation area. You'll find no reference to Northbridge or those cottages in the officer's report. No reference whatsoever to it being a conservation area. Quite frankly, the councillors and officers should be ashamed of the condition of the River Colne now at Northbridge, and how it's happened and what has progressed since the collapse in December 2023 is very odd in the extreme, because from nowhere a figure of £2 million has come, with the upper figure given in those rare occasions when information was shared was less than £1 million. We were assured that no works being done there would affect, if you council so wished, to bring back a weir. It's quite clear you cannot bring a weir back because tons of concrete have been put on the riverbed at Middle Mill. It's physically impossible to bring back a weir to what was there before. So we've been deceived and misled, either deliberately or unfortunately by some other form of neglect, but we are. On page 169 of your report today, I'm appalled to see there's going to be a health and safety review. For God's sake, this is a river. It's been there since time began, since before Colchester was civilised, and I'm not aware, and I've lived in this area for many years, and why you need a health and safety review of the River Colne at Middle Mill to Northbridge, it certainly beats me. On paragraph 4.2 on page 170, it says the Middle Mill, the ownership and responsibility and maintenance lies with Essex Highways. So why have Colchester Council contributed £450,000 to something which is the responsibility of Essex County Council? That is something which I find quite interesting. And of course, only having 3 minutes is not good. Residents' associations in both North Castle and Riverside wish the river to be reinstated. The river was at the level for over 1,000 years when the Saxons built a mill there, predates the Norman conquest. We know that in Roman times the river was navigable to Northbridge and beyond up to the Sheepen. So of course the river has changed in character over the years. But the opinion of those who reside in the area, the opinion of the Colchester Canoe Club, whose very existence now hangs on this council, you can kill that club off. You can kill that club off. But I hope that you'll go, what is an expensive option, there's no denying that, but this council managed to spend, arguably squander, millions of pounds on other projects, but this is a conservation area. Treat it as a conservation area.
Thank you, Sir Bob. Noted what you've said, and I'm amazed at your picture because I'd also decided to,
look at that,
to bring along what's on my bedroom wall. And the thing about my picture, though, compared to yours, is you've got an Edwardian gentleman here having a date with 2 ladies on a little rowing boat. I really like this one. But this image means a lot to me as well, Sir Bob, because, and I know that the Canoe Club, and we'll hear no doubt later on, a lot of that activity is sporting in nature. But there you see a leisure activity.
Absolutely.
You see the river activated. It's a blue artery, and we know how popular the river is, don't we, us folks in North Colchester, because of what happens in Dedham.
Well, Chairman, can I thank you very much for that brilliant equaliser. A brilliant equaliser. You could not row a boat on there now. In fact, the Swans find it difficult to do more than just paddle.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. I'm not going to say anything else, but we're going to have a...
I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, I've got one for you then.
Yeah, go on, keep
so, the concrete you speak of that's got piling, was that all the way across originally?
I echo what has just been said by somebody
Because the weir was there in that
Yeah.
place?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the amount of concrete. I think what's happened, in fairness, well, for a start, the Castle Ward councillors have not been involved in this. What information has been shared with councillors was that what work was being done would not affect the restoration of a weir should that decision be made. It is physically impossible to put the weir back in its position because the tons of concrete that have been put in there have raised the riverbed. You can't do it. It just can't be done.
We're going to have this discussion, so Bob.
Thank you.
For your contribution. We're now going to move on. Okay, folks. I don't think we have any other speakers tonight on any other matters, so we'll save that energy for Middle Mill when we get to that substantial item. Decisions taken under special urgency provision. There are no such. Cabinet or portfolio holder decisions called in for review. None. Items requested by members of the panel or other members? None. And therefore we move on to item 10, which is a briefing from the Leader of the Council, Councillor David King. Thank you, David, for coming along tonight. In your hands.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, committee. We agree that what will be helpful in the time that I have, and you've got a very busy agenda, is do what I would usually do and what you'd expect of me, which is give you a sense of the whole, given that's the responsibilities that I have. We've got a few slides to show you. I'll frighten you by saying there's 24 of them. I'll tell you half of them are images and pictures, so I'd get through this at best pace, and I'll make some time for, as you've asked, on local government reorganisation.
So folks in the room, this is primus inter pares. The leader is the first among equals of the executive. And tonight the focus is going to be on LGR and what's coming along for Colchester in the future. Over to you, David.
All right, well, a picture of yourselves always to catch your audience, first of all. And there's a sort of serious point behind this for me, because scrutiny is not a one-off moment, is it? So the whole of our municipal year is about the checks and balances which encourage us and enable us to do the best we can to look after the affairs of the council. In the wider sense, the family of organisations that we have a responsibility for, which serve people of Colchester, I think, in the round pretty well, but we'll perhaps get to that at the close. So I'll run through, if that's all right, and then we'll pause at the close. So next slide, please, Owen. So these are some of the things which are down on my personal checklist. I'll pause on some and fly by some of the others. Not on that list includes an oversight role for Commercial Holdings Limited, Colchester Commercial Holdings Limited, which is Amphora, and Colchester Borough Homes. But of course, as part of the team game that we have to play, there is an oversight function for governance and audit. But I'll just run down through some of the key points and stop for a while on some on the right-hand side, which I think might have more attention, require more of your time. So next slide, please. So a strategic plan. We need a context and a framework. This is approved by full council. And all I would want to bring out for those who are looking at this is the breadth and the ambition that shows for a large, but nonetheless district council. And for those who have any interest in local government, of course, we are minnow amongst Wales. The great majority of government funding is from Whitehall. The great majority of local government funding is through Essex County Council in our case. But we are an influential organisation that makes a difference to the lives of our residents and has an impact beyond this place. And if we were to touch on one example, it would be on housing. I'm looking across here at Councillor Paul Smith, who has an enjoyable few years on this before stepping back. Housing really matters. Homelessness really matters. The lives of people are affected by fundamentals like that. So all I would bring out here, apart from breadth and range, is that I am seeing us as a district council alive to the government changes that we are having to adapt to, local government reorganisation, in which we're all going to be fused together into a smaller number of larger councils that do everything, a one-stop shop, but still a very large one-stop shop either 3 or 4, or who will be told, or 5 across Essex, we as a district council have had a breadth of ambition, range and some capacity, despite not yet being in that new configuration. And what we're having to do now, alive to what the future will bring to us, is to ensure that we temper ambition with realism, that we get ourselves in the very best shape that we can. So where I'll bring you to in the quick walkthrough will be the path towards local government reorganisation ready, LGR ready. It's not going to be something that people will talk to their children over, their cornflakes, but it's about ensuring that we've got the right balance, resource to task, the best balance between debt and income, a robust financial position as much as we're able, whilst meeting core functions. So a reminder of the strategic plan. Next slide. These, as I say, are the kinds of things that I have a personal and deeper than some involvement in, responsible for the team. Running down those, that includes the relationship with those who create wealth in our city, businesses, business leaders, ambassadors. It's about representation of our city beyond this place. It's about communicating this as well as we can amongst my peers, doing the best I can to ensure that the voice of the City Council is heard. So there's a measure of, alongside, not in place of, the Mayor, having a role in community leadership. Ensuring we are fit for the future, which underpins the transition of the last couple of years, which will lead us to, as it must each year, a balanced budget that is shaped for where we're heading. And then some specifics, which I'll get on to now, including regeneration. Owen. I sort of have to apologise for those who just see lots of words, but some around this committee will understand them. So the city has had a set of opportunities which it's sought, secured, and has provided us funding, which we now must turn into delivery. We're quite well advanced. We've got a number of these under those early 3 headings. Team Colchester, which is a partnership with Essex County Council. A town deal, which is funding from central government, and levelling up, which is likewise. And you would have seen, and I'll illustrate some of this at the close, because it comes here to this committee or others, that this investment, or these series of investments, are starting to change the landscape of our place. Some of them you'll be looking in depth at heart of Greenstead, have a deep social good at their heart about transforming the lives of people in one of the most difficult places to live in our district of Colchester, and actually nationally so. That's you have to talk through a scrutiny on Thursday. Many of the others are aimed at, in consultation with businesses and the commercial, looking at the commercial and residential needs of the city, are aimed at place. They're about ensuring that we make ourselves fit for a modern view of what a city centre should provide. We've made real, deep progress. I'll illustrate that later on. Levelling up, some of that's very structural. This is about looking at place in terms of highways, St Botolph's roundabout, St Botolph's square, but again they're about regeneration and change. And what they do, and it takes more time than I'd ever have wanted to, is bring us closer to being the kind of city on which we can have a real longer term pride and confidence in. And I'll touch on what I see and glimpse in terms of confidence, in terms of business and commercial partners, which is helped by that public and private partnership, which I play a role in. So on Team Colchester, give you some scraps of information, only I grant. We're looking at St Botolph now, the tenders. We're getting close to the point of contract, which will lead us through to delivery in 27. And we're looking at work on the interchanges. We're looking at Britannia soft marketing. So there's a mixture of things nearly ready to go and projects coming through, which we can talk about later if you need. Now, you will see this in this forum and elsewhere, but the sense I want to give to those who are watching will be a sense of a city that has I think, quite a long, unique moment in which it can make a material difference to its positioning as it goes into a new unitary authority. Part of that is also enabled by and supported by private sector investment. I'll touch on that later. And by business vibrancy, which we can play a role in. Next slide. So that's one particular issue I pay personal attention to, cross-party. This is also cross-party, and I pay attention to it in the portfolio roles that I have. Communities and cohesion. So we have Councillor Jocelyn has a deep role here, but I look at resettlement and cohesion because there is no question there is a national difficulty. It's more than a debate, it's an argument, it's protest and counter-protest. All I will say is this should concern us all, it concerns me. I watch and engage in this space, as do others, and with the many in the voluntary sector who care deeply about the many communities inside this city of ours that give it that special vibrancy. And a couple of the images there are a reflection of this. The one on the top right, just one of many images out of our recent carnival. There is a joy for most of us, it seems to me, in seeing, certainly most members, in seeing many communities come together to share what they have, to share what's distinctive about them, whether it's their food, their colours, their faiths. And the same is true for other moments in which we can join together. And on the left-hand side is an image from a recent declaration of Colchester as a city of sanctuary. Now this, I read in a very sort of prosaic kind of way. It's realism that people would not agree with each other. It's real, or not always, that new arrivals to our city, wherever they may come from, may not feel welcome, may take time to adjust. Our choices are few. We either recognise this, put an arm around people in the best of senses, help new arrivals to be good citizens, help each other to adapt and adjust. That, in my view, is the only way to go. And I believe that that's welcomed by the great majority of residents and across all parties as members. I do what I can to ensure in a balanced way that that gets some time and attention. A recent illustration of that, a great example of forward thinking in my view, was the mayor inviting different faiths to speak, faith representatives to speak at the recent full council meeting. And we're going to take that idea on. My only point, I guess, beyond that is down to us, isn't it, collectively, how much we place a value on this. But having a peaceful, prosperous city, those two are intertwined. Next slide. As I did last year, these are only moments of illustration. We have to, as a cabinet, and we as members have to look at the organisational health of the city council and its component parts. We've got the better part of 1,000 people doing many dozens of substantive and some, in thinner ways, many other services, providing to our residents in ways that help them have a better life. And we gave one example earlier, which is around housing and preventing homelessness, where we've been much more successful than many, but still face a rising cost, rising tide of people who are struggling to find the way, and helping people with others to get to work, and finding people who are in a struggle between places to find interim solutions and help and support in the community sense. All of that takes time and energy, and it's yet a series of calls on organisation that has to do the daily prosaic things like the bins, which is what all most residents understandably think of. That complex picture calls upon those people, and as is being found out in some parts of the country who have had changes in administration, taking substantive cost out of organisations that have got leaner over the last decade or so is extraordinarily difficult. To all of this, we have to add local government reorganisation, which requires us to look into the future and judge how will our systems, our data, our people, our services be affected by putting tendering with Colchester, with Braintree, perhaps even with Uttlesford, Who knows what other combination might yet still emerge or be imposed? How will that affect all that? How will that work? Will those people want to stay? Where will they be centred? Will they stay in their current patterns before the shift to new ones? And as important as the transactions of change, where are the opportunities? And there are some really significant ones. And when those significant opportunities, how do we best take them? That's a stress on the organisation. That's the only point in substance I want to make beyond what lies ahead. I think we are under strain. I see it in a lot of places. I see it by talking to good people who are making the most of their circumstances. They're not wasting their time or hours. They serve the public process in the way we require them to. It can be too long, too complex, too paper-based, but it in large part is imposed. It's way public scrutiny, like tonight. So require us to be here to the middle of the evening, won't it, Chair? All of that takes time and energy. It's a strain and stress to the organisation. I think we're well placed to make the transition, but I do have real concerns about the strain and stress it's going to put on some key people, and I'm already seeing some of the effects of that. Next slide. Okay, devolution. Right. We all like a picture, so on the left-hand side is one of the leading candidates, a case for 5 that's supported by the majority of councils, including Colchester City Council, which puts us with Tendring to our right, North East Essex, and Braintree to our left. And then there's one other illustration, and there are a number, because there's 4 cases, which is the case put forward by Essex County Council, which sees us linked with Uttlesford. And in the middle, some of the joyful chaps and lasses who are at the heart of this through Essex leaders and chief execs, and some headlines that follow. I'll walk through just a few slides because today reminded me, looking at the material that's floating, there are dozens of slides. You haven't got the time. You wouldn't want to spend it on this. We'll come back to this, but I'll try and give a headlines and sense of where we're at. What we're waiting for, most of all, and I'll touch on this again in a moment, is to see what the dance-off is. So government will decide, out of the 4 propositions it's got, as every council has now made its mark and said what it thinks is best out of the choices available, it will say which ones will go forward for consultation and then decision in Whitehall. None of that is in our control, a point I will keep stressing because I think it's misunderstood. We don't have a huge amount of choice about this other than how we play into the public space, how we prepare for the future. And how we prepare for the future is not to minimise the amount of discord that there is natural in political difference, let alone difference between neighbouring local authorities, some of whom have fractious relationships. We have pretty good ones in the North East, but it's not universally true. And start to work together and the expectation of what might follow, which we've done in North East Essex. We are the leading group, I think most would say, most of my counterparts would say, in making a start, the 3 of us with the County Council, to look at what the opportunities might be and how the transition in just the next couple of years, how that might work. Next slide. Okay, so just a few points on devolution and local government organisation. So, as I say, remember, all the way through from the point in September we said what our view was, this is a process over which we have a limited degree of influence. So the statutory instrument on devolution has the parliamentary process that makes it possible to give power from Whitehall down to Essex, which I support. It's a good thing. It may be only £40 million a year initially, but it will come with, if a new mayor is brave enough, ability to raise money. It will give that new mayor power and influence, there's no question about that, and a national voice. So devolution, for me and for most, has not been, now that we've got ourselves more accustomed to it, an issue. Why wouldn't we want a figure with influence, access, funding, the ability to address some of the issues, strategic issues like transport, for example, and and skills and investment across the whole of the county. But we need Parliament to continue the process that it's shown itself willing to do across the rest of the country. The mayoral combined county authority is a mouthful, but that's the organisation that supports that new mayor. We could leave, and it apparently has happened, a new mayor in May 26 with nothing other than a pot plant and a desk. Seem a little bit foolish. So we're doing what we should do, which is working up across Essex views on what might fit for any mayor, a to-do list, a possibility list, and underneath it the information that will support that. We know that they will come with their own list, that's how these things will work, but giving them a starting point with the economic case, the baseline, the data, and an outline of the means to do it is just practical. So we're into that deep kind of work. Say we as in the collective sense of small groups of people from all of the local authorities across Essex. There is a huge amount to be done to put in place a structure we've not had before in Essex, with the authority, the organisation, an initial starter kit, it was described to me, of the people who would make a new mayor have the collective intellectual power and capacity to start running, engaging and making a difference as early as they can from May next year. That team might be 25 or so. The evidence from elsewhere is it rapidly has to get bigger, 150 or so within a year is one of the suggestions. Now, this is not about creating new jobs. This is about creating and shaping new capacity. It'll be about drawing upon resources and assets across all of Essex to ensure, as I say, that the new mayor can run. On the right-hand side, just a few points on local government reorganisation. That's the meshing together of district councils. We're waiting that dance off. Will 4 propositions go through? Will it be 2? Or will an early decision be made? It's more likely, looking at others, there'll be at least a couple will go through for a public view to be taken. The consultation process is be run by government. It'll take 8 weeks or so. If it's when we think it is, it'll probably start in December, go through to January. And then ministers with the jargon will make a minded to decision, because again, there's a parliamentary process that will follow. All of this should, it's not in our hands, happen by March, which is just ahead of something that will interest some residents and will certainly interest members, which is the current projected elections for the county council, delayed already a year, and for the district council, we here in this place do 1/3 of members every year. I know I'm going to be asked this question, so I anticipate it by saying that's the official position. Everything else after that is a speculation as to what will or won't be done. But that's the official position, and it's still, curiously, the official position. There must be a question about it, because it will compound itself with a mayoral election. And it will be for a very short time, given that all existing organisations will disappear by 28, when the unitaries form up. In the meantime, on both devolution, which is such a dance of words, isn't it? The big piece structure changes that enable a mayor to have a governing role across Essex, to have influence at strategic level, and for local government reorganisation, how to meld together 15 into 3 or 5, or another number. There's an awful lot to do, is such a simple thing to say. There's working groups of good people doing a bit more than their existing day job and not seeing much extra capacity being created. This is squeezing out of existing knowledgeable people what they know, putting them together and creating a sense of how government's transition and change could best be managed. And it feels to me like a sort of a third of the way up, very long slope, all the way through into 27 and 28. Next slide. This is too small a print, but perhaps the big headlines give you a sense. Councillor Smith is helping me by nodding, and I agree with him. But just to give, what it does give you is a sense of some of the complexity that I'm talking about. We'll look at the slides later on. I covered most of these key points, I think, already. Next slide. This in bigger blocks, and to show my even-handedness, this is an Essex slide, shows in big blocks, perhaps it's a bit easy to read, the timeline that I touched on beforehand. So that parliamentary process that goes through to everything gives us a decision. Regulations are issued and we kind of get the go-ahead. For devolution, we create a Greater Essex combined authority, and as everybody will note, that has to be ahead of having a mayor. Mayoral elections then follow, gives you a mayor, then has a structure and organisation and powers. At the rate at which the powers come across depends also upon parliamentary bill for devolution, which will expand the range of those things which he will have some structural authority over. The bottom line to pulls out the reality is we won't be waiting. We'll have a shadow board on which I am sitting. And that takes us through to May and beyond. Next slide. Right, go back one, would you? Try not to distract you. So, staying just with this for a second, I'm not going too far into the timeline, which remind ourselves, has a year in which Colchester City Council starts to lose authority before it transitions fully into new unitary. So through 27 into 28 with elections. Along the way, for an organisation that will have to prepare for its demise. It's all new for all of us, but it has to be done if this is to happen, and it has to be done responsibly, and I just know that that's what we are going to do, as much as the circumstances will allow. I found myself reflecting before I came in on how on earth to try and summarise this, and it's not quite impossible. Probably demonstrated it almost is. I think what matters is what we do. So, and what we're trying to do, and to a degree, this is one thing I can say I have to be in the heart of and have been. I know that what we're doing, the leadership, officer leadership, and this is cross-party as much as it can be, we're doing what we can. So we're doing what we can to be inside these complex processes, to be productive, to be heard. Doesn't necessarily change much, but it can change some things. It has at certain stages. Through Essex Leaders, Chief Execs, which is the top level, if you like, of the leaders and chief execs across the county. It's a place for debate, but it's a place for decision, and it's a place for the test and challenge that's led us to the proposals that were placed in September. Now, I'm deputy chair on that. That's been a help sometimes. I'm on the devolution group alongside Councillor Bentley and others. But I have to be sort of frank and say that I always remember that this city council, influential though it is of course a junior partner. Devolution, the decisions will be made by the three unitaries, South End County, and yes, my brain's gone for a moment. Thank you so much. How can I forget, actually? With all respect to my colleagues there, he says swiftly. That dance of authority and decision has to rest around them because that's where it vests at the moment. But all the district councils have a voice. And I can say to you that I am comfortable, much as you can be, that we have had a good hearing where it's mattered most. We've got ourselves over a few difficulties by that collegiate approach. It's absolutely vital when you're going to put 15 councils working people together, and you're starting to think about it now. When even next spring, when a mayor is in place, their ability to do anything will actually largely rest, not on whatever pot of gold they've got, not on the team that's immediately around them, those couple dozen more growing. It will rest upon the thousands of good people across the whole of the county who are doing jobs which range from the, what's the mayor? Doing the bins and doing the everyday, to absolutely having an influence on how structured services can be changed and improved. So he's looking for opportunities, is perhaps my last point. So for me, this whole process is about that. And our chief exec, Pam Donnelly, has always had the same view. So we've got a choice. And we've had this choice all the way since LGR started. And I'll describe my personal journey very quickly. So when I heard what was being planned without any consultation with us, I felt a rare crossness. Could even use the word rage for a moment, because this was being done to people who hadn't asked for it, who had a hands full. But that doesn't help anything. Devolution has real opportunity, and I and others have changed swiftly to see what could those be. One of the most significant, apart from, and it's a debatable point, we're going to be a very large unitary authority. At the upper end of the scale, we're going to be at least 500,000 people in one council. When a lot of the evidence suggests the most effective are more around 300,000 or so. It's one of the points that's made. On a fairly factual basis, as far as I'm concerned, from the tests and challenge we've given to the case for 5. But if we end up with, and it looks like we will, won't we? At least 500,000 strong, we're going to have to look for the other opportunities, not those of scale, but how we can combine district council services with county council services in a more effective way. How we can use, in my view, local knowledge, not county knowledge, and this is without any lack of respect for county colleagues, many of them are highly capable. Essex passed many national tests for qualities. It's not about that, but in the new world we're in, what can we do different? I think we could certainly address the biggest problems of our time, which is around social care and prevention of health issues by intervention early, by changes to lifestyle, by a combination of that with how you help people live a better life, including specifically around housing provision. The system accepts the challenges. At the moment, it's not organised to bring together the solutions. The structures are too separate, so people have the conversations, targeted investment can happen, but it isn't structurally combined. A new unitary could do that. I'll stop at that, Chair, on that, and go to the last couple of slides, and then some images so you can all relax. Right, so this is about being LGR ready. For me, that's, with respect, that's the point of this. You know, there's no point in looking at one part of this whole, it's got to be the whole. So the local government organisation is dominating much of what we think about and what we do. It doesn't change every decision, but it means you look just beyond this. Is this the right decision alive to the new organisations and structures and realities that we're starting to think about and starting to scope? So I want to be at the centre of change we are. We will need to have prudent budgets. You will see this. They're coming earlier this year. They will be leaner. We are working very hard as a collective team with some cross-party work already on issues like estates and disposals, which will be factored into all of this. We're going to start our transition to that future as early as we can. We've got to take our own staff and people with us as much as we can, and members. I like to think we've done that fairly well, much as we can. We've shared as we've gone. We stopped, we listened, we formed an advisory group cross-party. I know that immediately we agree on anything, it's the way these things, different members will have different views, that's just how it is. But the point is that we're having that debate, sharing the information, we'll keep doing that all the way through. That's certainly my approach. Taking the public with us, the public, this is not top of their list. They care most about other things, and then when they think about the council, they think about things that affect them, and that's quite right. But this really does matter, so we must work at that, and that will be the aim and the objective. And we're not going to sit still. Why would we do that? We've got a couple of years in which we can make a difference. We absolutely should do that. So commit where you can, the right to do it. Absolutely focus on delivery. Leave ourselves in the best shape that we can. Thank you. Next slide. Nearly there, Chair. Right. You always like me to insist on putting one picture of me at least in. There's something about the positives, about how we feel about where we are as a city council. And I think we're getting used to, your subject for me was talk about LGR. I think most members kind of get used to it. We all have individual views. Will it fit? We're going to retire, we're going to stay, do we look forward to what's coming or not? That's all very personal. But I think there's something that does unite us is about the city. This is a great place. I'll make that argument to anybody. It's a place of opportunities, and it's got momentum, it's got real strengths, and it's got some scale. it's got some geographical advantages. I think that place, with every respect to our colleagues, wherever they may be, from Uttlesford to Malden, who knows the combination? I think in any one of the permutations that we will be pretty well placed. Next slide. I want to give you just a quick reminder. You've seen some of these. So this is, don't point at any of them and ask me to see what the 1-inch squiggle looks like, but we've touched on some of them. So it's just an illustration of the array of renovations, regenerations, refurbishment and changes, the investments that are going on into the city. Next slide. This you'll recognise as Holy Trinity Church. We are getting closer to the point at which, I think it's next January, we go to the Heritage Lottery Fund, but we're on that path and we've got works underway now. We've got the garden going out for the tender on this shortly. Next slide. Some works illustrative drawings of what we might do. Next slide. And it's not all drawing, and it's not all the possibilities of the future, though in my view these things will happen. This is about what's been happening this last year. Many of us enjoyed going to, I have been known to be sarcastic about this, I don't mean to, one of the slowest accelerated schemes I've ever found, but there were some good reasons for it, as well as some learning lessons about how to work, which we'll have to do in the future as one authority, not as two. We're doing that now through Team Colchester much more effectively. This is St Nicholas Square for those who haven't been down there. Go and have a look around that. It's a good place to be out in the summer and other times of year. And there's a schedule for music and display. And I know that local businesses and many people I've spoken to have found this really enjoyable. Next slide. The digital hub, now complete, one of half a dozen projects under the town deal that's been done. Next slide. Illustrations of what's coming through into planning around St Botolph's Quarter. Next slide. Another shot. This is down by the railway station, and I hope that St Botolph's railway station, and I hope that this will transform that disguised, ill-used part of the city. Next slide. We have had some interesting conversations here about things that haven't worked as well as anticipated, a pandemic and a breach of the economic momentum of the time. The withdrawal of Cineworld made all our lives very difficult. We weren't the only people in that position, but after hesitation we've now got a deal for the cinema up at Northern Gateway. I think that's really going to fly as a place. On the other side is a past investment endorsed by this and funded by the City Council for the sports park. So Northern Gateway starting to do well. It has to, from our perspective, financially, but there's every signs that it will. Next slide. Jumbo Chair, I know your interest in this. It's fantastic news that here we've been a junior partner, but we've been an influential one. Our funding has helped secure others. Our lobbying has helped ease the way. And we were instrumental in the early days of helping to shape the proposals. Every credit to the Trust for what they've done. This will give improved heritage, improved public realm as well. So what we got is a public benefit, whether you go in or use this fantastic facility or not, from one end of the city centre to the other. Next slide. And we've got private sector investment as well, which we can forget. So on the right-hand side, just a reminder of what we understand of recent years' trackable investments, public and private, into just some significant sums of money. And the illustration some will recognise is the former M&S. Those who like M&S food, as a lot of us, will wish it was nearby, but this looks to be a fascinating investment going now through planning process. And all of this footfall, movement, change for better is something we have a degree of influence over. That's all, but it can be really crucial to business investors. They feel our collar a little bit, they get a sense of us and a sense of the future. Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, folks. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Conscious of your comments about being brief and keeping to time, I would like to express my personal thoughts about how well the devolution situation has worked with Essex and Colchester Council, that we have been treated, I think, a lot better than many other district councils elsewhere in the country from what I've heard. And I think that reflects considerable credit on the leader of Essex County Council, who I don't normally say nice things about in public meetings, but I think credit should be done there. And also I think your role in dealing with it as being on part of the leadership team, you have done an excellent job in presenting a cross-party approach to what's going on. And I think you've done a great job in keeping councillors informed as to what's going on there. One question, the Greater Essex Combined Authority, has the distribution of voting rights been sorted out on that yet? It hasn't.
No, I understand it has, and it's as it's been publicly known. I mean, the final confirmation will require due process, but what I've heard is, I expect will stay, is an unequal, if you look at it in terms of numbers of councils, unequal if in terms of current responsibilities, but it is what it is, and it's a 3, 2 and 2 for County, Thurrock and Southend. But I will add a remark that won't surprise you. For anybody who looks at successful combined authorities, the answer is not in who's got who's got rather more of a vote. Not only is it a temporary arrangement until the combined authority is made up by the new unitary authorities, which will have the same vote each, as I understand it. But the reality is it's about the partnership. That's absolutely an obligation. This can't work unless it's a team. So you have a captain, the analogies are obvious, aren't they? You have a captain and there, he has to have a team, and that will be the authorities around him. The interim arrangements are as I've described. There will be on there others. I'm expecting, but it's not for me to confirm, a couple of district councils. I would think, I know, the PFCC, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, Health, and so on. So this will be deliberately broad, and I think that will probably help how things will play out when it comes to cooperation.
Thank you. All I would add is I think captain could be a she.
Thank you, absolutely, and interchangeably do use he and she, but thank you, yeah.
Okay, I see lots of questions on the horizon. It's great. I'm going to jump in there on this captain front. So you're the captain leader of a football team. You're 1-0 down, and the referee just announces you're going to have 45 minutes of extra time. Can I get a personal take on you around what you think the impact might be if they do decide to postpone elections next year for the third of the city and postponing the county again? And it's a very serious point. I am concerned about the democratic deficit that will be perceived. I mean, you know, politicians have never been particularly popular, but this worries me a little bit. And I just wonder if you have you don't have to, but it's a personal view. I wonder if you do have a view. I have a view.
I do, but you won't be surprised if it's somewhat down the middle. So I kind of get both sides of this. Of course, we should have a regularity of democratic process. We should have those elections. But then you get to the why not. The why not has some legitimacy. We are facing huge strains in every organisation, huge amount of change. You have to stop still. The whole process in each council has to stop still while you have your elections. So you suspend a lot of your normal business. Certainly anything that's significant in decision making wouldn't be right to say you stop doing the bins and being able to make a decision if you really must, but it does interrupt. So I would just say I understand the alternative case. I'm mindful also that you could argue, and some will, if we get to the point of not having them, that you want the focus to be on a mayoral election. So there will be a democratic choice. There'd be no question about that. The question is how many other layers of, for a short-term purpose. We have to accept that the 45 minutes also might be uncomfortable for some of those who have been asked to stay on, because I know that quite a few members were ready to go a year ago in the natural cycle of change and finding themselves being asked to continue to serve the residents. And I'm going to assume that they're going to continue to do that onward. But yeah, all of this is difficult. None of these choices are quite as black and white as they'll be portrayed. There will be an electoral process after all, including to a new unitary authority. But no, I did start, and perhaps I do start with kind of thinking, well, we monkey with the cycle with some peril. It's difficult to explain, but I do understand why some portray it in the way I just have.
I think it's a live conversation. Okay, thank you for that. Right, I've got Councillor Rippingale, then Councillor Osborne, and I think I saw Councillor Rowe.
So if you indulge me, 2 questions in one. Obviously, you've detailed it's going to be quite a challenging process. What do you foresee the challenges of this council leading up to LGR, and what learnings are we taking from authorities that have already gone through this process? And you mentioned about health. Given the changes to the ICB structures and boundaries with LGR, what will be the impact on our existing health partnerships and the health work plan for the city?
Thank you. Well, I think the challenges for us, to be honest, are to be, for the City Council in a narrow way, is going to be ensuring that we do what really matters. We do what we said just now, say on the tin, we'll keep saying it, be ready. So we're as robust in our financial management, we're as lean as we can. We don't pass on what is unachievable to our successors. I think that natural tension between wanting to do things, being able to deliver them, that you could see in probably any local authority, maybe in any business. And I think it's particularly important that we keep that trimmed all the way through here. In short, we run ourselves well, while still providing energy and time for the transition, which is going to be prosaic, but really essential, really understanding, do we do things the same? Where there are differences, what's the sequence and order of transition, and then starting eventually to start thinking about people, how would you operate, how much of that would change and what when. It's a huge, multi-dimensional task. I've got no doubt it can be done, these things always can be, but it's going to be a real difficulty. In terms of learning, of course, there are other local authorities, large and small. We need to remember, we're not small. You know, as a Shire County, we were once, if we're not the biggest, we're one of the biggest in the country. Greater Essex, the best part of 2 million people, and of course a lot of the learning, I think, will be in there. But I've been party to some really fascinating conversations with some good people in Liverpool and elsewhere who tell you what they've learned, and some of it makes your hair stand up. You know, well, we started off with 5 people, and then we had 450 2 years later. Because these are vast, some of them are vast organisations, different geographies. So only some of that learning can be taken. But it was clear, if I kept it really simple, the learning from elsewhere that we would want to apply in Essex would be know yourselves, know your partners, have the best possible relationships you can, because this requires that at every level. Set a leadership example, I would say. It's going to be crucial. People watch. Councillor Smith's remarks earlier were absolutely right. I'll take any credit he'll share with me, but Councillor Bentley framed this under the last government in absolutely the right way. Got no credit for it. And it ran on the rocks because of internal party differences, all of which are well known. And in the round, even though I disagree with his sell of 3 in recent weeks, in the round he's done a great job of keeping his eye on the prize, which is a transition. So if we do that, we've learnt a lesson already. We keep doing that with those relationships. I talk to the other council leaders. I've got a sense of their personalities, very different, but enough to know that they're invested in that. Last of your 3 questions was about health and ICB. It's a crucial relationship, particularly for taking advantage of what devolution and change can bring. We will have to do what you always do. You build on what you have, and you involve people early. We are already doing that.
Okay, Councillor Osborne.
Good evening. What support is being given to the voluntary sector to aid cohesion within the community? Thank you.
That's rather wide, I assume is rather wider than this part, the LGR piece, but it's actually, I take it in both ways. If we're sensible, we value all the voluntary sector do. I like to think we do in Colchester. We give grants, we put our arms around people, we welcome them, we visit them, we do the small soft touches as well as financially support and connect them. And we've seen through, I'd like to think we've been helpful. We've certainly been professional about working with those who've had the challenges like, Community 360. So I can't give you a full answer. I wouldn't like to say I can, but we will be doing all we can in the LGR transition to help those who help others. And we'll do that while we're a city council. And nothing I'm seeing about the emerging budget, which we'll share when we can, suggests other than, again, we value them and we need them, let's be frank.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions, 2 which are sort of interlinked, so if you don't mind, I'll sort of pull them together for you. So fit for the future, you did touch on that during the presentation, I appreciate it. Can you name some of the items that have been identified by the project and how much you think they're going to save? Because I'm acutely aware that we've got a £2 million hole that we have to fill at some point. And I'd like to understand if that's going to come from savings or we're going to pull that from the reserves. Thank you.
What I'd have to think about that, I mean, there's a whole array, and we've been through this a number of times here. I mean, what I would say to you is you'll see this in the emerging budget proposals in the coming weeks. But one will be waste, so that's structural changes, how we do things, as well as the ways in which we organise our people, having, frankly, over time, fewer people. The proposition that will come through to us in the budget, it takes Fit for the Future and builds on it. So if you don't mind, and you might, apologies, I'd ask you to wait for that, because then you'll have a richer picture, and I think it'd be more helpful. I'm quite happy to talk to you off to one side and walk through. In terms of how we get the fiscal probity, I know matters to you. We have this conversation in a number of places, including the George. It's going to have to be a combination. It's entirely legitimate, I say this in advance, to draw on reserves where that's a bridging moment, or if that's to invest to save. We will have a combination of things which will leave us in a fiscally robust position, running leaner than we might, and then crucially, meeting the 3 million gap that was forecast from last year and pressures inevitably that have come through in this. We'll have to demonstrate it then, but we're doing all we can to make sure we're ready for that.
Thank you, Leader. I appreciate that answer, and I thought it was going to be something along those lines. Effectively trying to keep you honest on the list of items that I'm sure we're identifying to save across the board. So I will wait and look for those. Final question is around, you did touch on it, around being the city of sanctuary. I'd just like to understand, sort of from a council perspective and from your perspective, how does the council and has the cabinet and you personally reconcile the council's recognition of having a housing crisis with our commitment to being a city of sanctuary?
I think this question has come up last night at the local plan. I was abroad, so otherwise I would have listened in. But if I understand the answer, it's correct, as certainly it fits my recollection, which is housing pressure coming from immigration of any form. And we need to remind ourselves, because people have one-dimensional views on this, whether it's that includes those people more comfortable with seeing arrive, who we feel a warmer heart to, perhaps. But wherever their sources are, it is a very small influence on housing demand and numbers. And I think that's how I would frame my answer. So, city of sanctuary does not, of course, add a house. It does not add a demand. It's a recognition that community cohesion, us getting on collectively, whoever us might be, requires us to recognise our differences and to work to reduce them. Now, at one level, that might be ensuring it's a good conversation to have, it needs the time to have it. It might be about requiring new citizens or potential new citizens to understand the community and the country and the place that they're in. The other end, it might be bridging differences between different faiths. And others, it might just be actually being good neighbours and letting others live their lives in the way they think. Whatever is the place that each of us settle on, the declaration doesn't change housing demand and doesn't change housing supply. Those are sort of to one side. Housing demand and housing supply are huge challenges. They're not materially affected by this. It's just not a truth.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Folks, I am conscious of the time tonight. We're doing really well here. What I'm wondering is, Councillor Pearson, would you object if we had your item a bit later? Given the public attendance here tonight, I'm sorry folks online and others, I'm going to disappoint someone now, but we need to have Middle Mill moved up the agenda, I think, if that's okay. So what I'm proposing to do then is just to have, I think Councillor Willetts has got 1 or 2 questions, Leader, for you. I'm then happy to close this item, move on to Middle Mill, and it might be that we have your say speakers and then have a short comfort break and then return back for the substantive conversation around Middle Mill. That's how it might go. Councillor Willetts.
Thank you, Chairman. Local government reorganisation is one huge management restructuring, and it's not unique to local government. It happens when companies get taken over, and it's a part of life that one has to accept. And I certainly accepted it. I've involved myself in the detailed analysis of whether 3, 4 or 5 is the correct democratic and the correct sort of service delivery option, so on. But I had a salutary experience recently. I was speaking to our local bin people when they were collecting. We sometimes give them a glass of water to help them on their way, or a cup of tea, things for the time. And I was saying how difficult it was. And the guy responded to me. He said, it's really got nothing to do with the things that really matter in local government. He said, what is really important is that he and his colleagues continue emptying the bins. And I started to think from that, yes, involved as a councillor at the sort of top level down, but so much of this discussion appears to the public to be all about sort of greasy poles. Who is going to be the chief executives of the next, moving from 13 to 3, 4 or 5? How are the senior officers going to fit themselves in? Who is going to get generous pension payoffs and leave the service of local government? And so much of the perception, and it may not be the reality, Leader, and you can sort of put me right on this, but so much of the perception for the people who just sit and listen is that this is all about management. It's all about, will there be 3 council leaders going around in their council jags, or will there be 5 opportunities for council leaders to drive around in 5 council jags? And although certainly you did mention service delivery on one of your slides is one of the important things, the public perception of this whole exercise is that it is all about opportunities for senior management, and that there is not the same focus on the continuation of the essential services, waste collection, housing options, homelessness, planning policy, environmental team, benefits processing, all the things we do as a day-to-day business, and all the things which we will continue doing as a day-to-day business, regardless of the management structure above. And so there is this perception, and I wonder whether you think we are giving the wrong perception to the taxpayers who are actually funding the whole of this, in our concentration on the management structures, rather than concentrating on how we just continue providing those essential public services which everyone relies on so much and wish to see it continue, not caring a fig really about whether there are 3 or 5 management authorities controlling it, just concentrating on the quality of the services, their reliability and their acceptability. So what is your take on the perception of the whole of this process?
Lord, I thank you for the opportunity to round out what I said, if it's any help at all. I have to say, I don't hear what you've described to me, but I'm sure that there are many views, and some of them will be, if you look on social media of your choice, some of them will be at the, oh, it's all about them and themselves. I thought many residents are quiet, but in their own way thoughtful. My own experience is, as I say, I'm not having that kind of conversation. What I can tell you, absolutely, is I don't hear anywhere, perhaps nobody wants to say it in front of me, anything along the lines that you've described. I don't see a conversation around greasy poles, payoffs, all about management or council jags. And if anybody listening, there isn't one here. Wouldn't mind one, but there is none. No, and I think that as an opportunity to, if it is a need to correct any impression by anybody open-mindedly listening to this and wondering, is it just about management? But it has to be addressed, but it's absolutely not about that. This is about a reality. If I was to keep it in my, I would say this is about stretching what we can get from the public purse to get it to go further. And that then translates itself into the quality of the services we can offer at every level. Now, there are some disadvantages. You know, it's not giving a fig for 3 or 5 does matter. Keeping democracy local matters. We had that touched on that earlier. Democracy matters, you've got to know who it is. So it does rather matter which of the choices, but leave that to one side. Leave to one side important things like geography and how many councillors are available for the many people who come to us collectively with their issues and concerns. Leave that to one side. I'm not hearing that, how do we feather our nest conversation going on at all. I would be appalled to hear it. It's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing talented people looking at possibilities to get more out of what we will have in a difficult fiscal position for the nation and for local government. And I did give you I thought, a good example of how we can see some opportunities that are really fundamental to life chances in terms of places with deprivation and lack of equality, people who need social care, people towards the end of a complicated life in difficult circumstances. Their prospects, on the other end, maybe send, can be improved if we can combine what a district council and a county council does together more effectively. So it has to be about structures, but you're absolutely right. The point is, the consequence of change has to be focused on outcomes and services, in my view, is going to be.
Thank you. My second question, as you know, I represent a particularly interesting ward which runs from sort of Lexton and almost the Castle ward, Castle walls, all the way out to the Great Tay boundary. So I have an urban community and a rural community in the ward, and it is there's a quite different take between those particular constituencies. And reflecting on your presentation this evening, all the achievements were about the city centre, the need to do something about the old M&S, the triumphs of getting money for St Botolph's and so on. But we heard very little about what is being done in Wivenhoe, what is being done in Mersey, what is being done in Tiptree. And also one has to reflect that the people in those areas have a very vague affiliation with the city of Colchester. They're technically in the city of Colchester, but they tend not to come here to shop, not to come here to amuse themselves, with the exception of the Northern Gateway, which is clearly going to be a regional attraction for people. Do you think that as we move towards local government and a different structure, although we need to protect the heritage of the city, do you think we need a fairer balance so that the people in the rural areas feel that they are also getting the attention and the investment which is coming out of these management changes, rather than it just being another jolly good exercise to funnel more and more cash into the urban areas, for which the people in the rural areas pay, but perception is that they are not getting the same value from the council structures as those who are actually in the city centre. Is this going to change significantly as we move towards a different management structure under LGR?
Three points after the first one. First one is, this is not in itself going to create more wealth. This is an opportunity to do some things rather better as a set of councils in new configuration. And we will start with what we have. It'd be nice to think it might be supplemented, but we'll wait and see. I think that's unlikely. We have the resources we expect. But there's 3 points I'd make. The first is, for many in the rural area, and I do accept the point when you look at travel to work and socioeconomic patterns, they do vary according to which village and which town. But for many, the condition, the status, the accessibility, and the prosperity and attractiveness of the city centre does matter. And so I would gently say for a lot of our residents, wherever they may be, there is a value and certainly an enhanced choice if they take it. In terms of the rural areas, I was aware when I gave my brief illustrations, of course, this wouldn't touch on rules, not to exclude, it's just because it's, as you've said, there's more prominent schemes at this moment. But there are, as you all know, there are 2 arrangements involving rural investments. They are not the largest, but they will matter. Playgrounds and community centres are those illustrations. There's also the shared prosperity fund, which has led to some local investments in areas beyond the city centre. So I get the point, but it's not without some balance to your central last point, which is about the future. This is going to be down to us or whoever replaces us to ensure that the voice of the district of Colchester in all its component parts, glorious component parts, is heard in that new local authority. What we can do, and I've said this to others, is ensure that we place ourselves as well as we can when we go into that new organisation. And we're going to do that.
My final question, Chairman, is on the modal transport related to employment. If we look at the annual monitoring statements for the last 5 years or so, there is a strange pattern. About 29,000 people leave Colchester every working day. Although it has been affected by COVID, it's only just getting back to the old norms. They go to higher paid jobs in London, anywhere in fact outside Colchester. And then there is an inward migration of workers from the areas around, almost the same number, about 28,000 from Tendring and the surround, coming into Colchester to get jobs which I guess are slightly better than what is available in their areas. I think one of our policies is to try and provide more highly paid jobs in Colchester, but we do not seem to be sort of attracting major international law firms and property development firms and so on, which would provide an alternative to those who are travelling into London. As we head towards local government reorganisation, do you anticipate we will see any change to that sort of mode of transport, or will we just be accepting that the job patterns will remain broadly the same under the new management?
Again, I think in the short term, what will happen under devolution, which will address skills and strategic investment and transport, so could over time make a difference. But in the short term, under devolution or LGR, realistically, what we have, I guess, is what we have, and the trends implicit in it, which are always that individual's opportunity seeking, isn't it, really? And the difficulties of them moving and shifting, where they're placed geographically, are not going to change. But I think what we can continue to do, and what we're halfway through delivering and locking in place for the next few years, as I described earlier, is investments and a sense of reputation and attractiveness in Colchester to others, that is the kind of thing that leads to investments and decisions by companies about where they're going to place themselves. And in a hybrid world, where investments in people might come from. We've also got some great educational establishments here in Colchester, and that's going to be an attraction. We don't talk about it enough. We've got a great partnership with the university, not so far from here. So I think those combination of circumstances, the way I tried to describe it briefly earlier, it's a potent mix for a city that has a long quality opportunity set fare for LGR, as much as any place can be. We'll be at the heart, I believe, in the fairest way, we'll be at the heart of that new unitary.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Leader, thank you. It was comprehensive. Let's move on to Middle Mill now. Okay, so first of all, then I think I will be calling up Amanda Gilmore, if that's okay. And while we're just doing that, I'll just declare, it's not really an interest, but I am a member of the Kingfisher Kayak Club in Neyland, and I go out on the River Stour quite often, right, even in the dark. And of course, that is a river that was legislated to be a navigable route some 200 years ago or so, and it remains the case now, and we see fantastic work happening there to make it navigable with the recent refurbishment of the Dedham Lock Gates, for example. I did previously live on Bellevue Road, which is the main access road down to the old Lido, where the Canoe Club are based, and I did used to go out occasionally with the Canoe Club to help with the community litter picks along the river down there, but I haven't done that for a while, and I have never been a member formally of the club, but I just thought I'd just let you know there. I also have had some interesting mudlarking around North Station, which Sir Bob hopefully is gone. He's gone. Oh, that's fine then. Good. I didn't find anything that important, but I'm heavily invested in this discussion. I even went for a walk on Cymberley Meadows today because there was one point where I wondered, could we do something really creative there, like what they've done at Catawade with Constable Park, where you could have a commercial venture selling pizza, prosecco, and boat rides up into Colchester. So I'm heavily invested in the discussion, but our role here tonight is to look at the report and obviously make some suggestions to the Cabinet. It is this committee's the reason why we're all here tonight is because this committee asked to have a look at this. So I am a little bit concerned, and perhaps Lee will come on this later, I'm a little bit concerned to have heard the suggestion that an outcome has been predetermined by the structural way in which Essex Highways, in partnership with Colchester, have potentially repaired the bridge. So I do want to hear us touch on that tonight. But anyway, Amanda, you are first up, so you have the microphone. And I'm probably not going to respond to every individual point here because we're going to do it in a discussion, unless anyone puts their hand up with a particular point to tackle. Go for it, Amanda.
Thank you. My name is Amanda and I'm the chair of Colchester Canoe Club. At the last scrutiny meeting I attended, I left with the clear understanding that the club had been listened to and that moving forward we would be kept fully informed and treated with respect as the qualified and knowledgeable main users of the river. Regrettably, this has not been the case. As a club, we have received the majority of our updates through social media rather than through direct communication from the council. I reference this point since the collapse of the wheel 2 years ago, our members have worked even harder to support the community. We have continued to volunteer our time, providing ongoing maintenance and care for the river and its surroundings. The lack of communication and the handling of information through social media have therefore been both disappointing and disrespectful to the efforts of our volunteers. Despite these challenges, the club has continued to uphold its responsibilities. We have carried out regular cleaning of the river and adjacent areas, continued water testing, and also we're liaising with the British Trust for Ornithology to ensure that the swan population is coping well with the changes in their habitat. Our club remains a strong, positive force within the community. We are proud to hold such a high female-to-male ratio participation in the sport. We have also built a thriving junior-only session. The club is the only one in the Eastern region to operate a dedicated weekly junior-only session and one of only approximately 8 in the country to do so. Colchester City should take pride in this club, as Essex did when we was awarded the awards at the last lot of awards. They should take pride in this for the commitment of our volunteers. Our continued success has come in spite of the difficult circumstances we face. However, the situation remains critical. Without the weir, there will be no Team GB paddlers training in the city. Without sufficient water level, there will be no water sports activity. Consequently, the council will lose the free maintenance and environmental work currently carried out by the club. If at any point the club chooses to consider relocation, that decision will rest solely with us. It was therefore inappropriate for the council to make public statements on social media regarding this matter without prior consultation, and I respectfully request that the council seek the club's permission before making any further public comments relating to our future. I would like to extend my thanks to Leader King for meeting with me over the summer. I appreciate your understanding of the club's work and the difficulties we have encountered, as well as your willingness to listen, so I do thank you. Finally, I urge the council to consider the offer that the club made to find a fully qualified watercourse consultant to address these ongoing issues. The river and the community that depends upon it deserve more than to be left in their current condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, I've made notes. David Gilmore.
Sorry, good start. Good evening, I'm David. I'm speaking on behalf of Colchester Canoe Club as a safety officer. For over 45 years, we have operated safely on rivers across the UK and abroad. We're a Paddle UK accredited quality club holding champion youth, champion talent and clear access, clear water status. Our safety record is exemplary. A navigation safety zone was imposed at Middle Mill following the collapse. We supported that measure when the structure was unsafe. The bridge is now stabilised. There is no remaining evidence-based justification for continuing to restrict our controlled club operations. The restriction in its current form is disproportionate and is no longer aligned with the actual risk. Our coaching team are qualified, endorsed and insured to assess water safety. This is core to what we do as a club. We routinely provide safety cover for major water sports events across the UK, often in environments far more complex than the Colne and Middle Mill. We've completed a full paddle sport risk assessment for the new bridge and river layout. The hazards are clearly identified. The controls are robust and they exceed national standards. The evidence supports reinstatement of our activities. We fully respect the Council's responsibilities towards public safety. Our request does not conflict with that duty in any way. An independent safety review has been commissioned, something we could have provided. The Council already holds the hazard identification, recommendations and safety guidance we have prepared. On the basis of the evidence available, we are formally requesting that Colchester Canoe Club be permitted to resume activities within the restricted zone under our established safety procedures. Continued suspension is not supported by risk, by evidence or by proportionality. I must also address the process to date. Collaborative communication from the project team has been inadequate and at times obstructive. Reasonable requests for information have gone unanswered. Our professional input has consistently been disregarded. Our volunteer coaching team, who contribute thousands of hours to local community sport, feel neither respected or acknowledged by the council team. This approach has hindered progress and eroded trust. It must change. We remain prepared to work with officers, but meaningful collaboration requires transparency, timely communication and decision-making that reflects the actual risk. We therefore ask the council to review the restrictions without further delay and to set out a clear, definitive process and timeline for lifting the safety zone for club operations. Thank you.
David, I'll just ask you a question, sir. So what, if I feel a bit nostalgic about when I lived on Bellevue Road and took down my kayak tomorrow, and paddled from the old Lido down to Middle Mill, I can technically do that, but you can't do that because you're constituted as a club and it's a publicly available club, is that right?
Yeah. So access to the Colne is public access by licence, so there's no public right of navigation. Although you could do it, you'd be doing it without a licence.
Even if I'm a member of the British Canoe Association?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, that's good, thank you. All right, next up, let's have Steve Waters. Great name, Steve.
Sorry. Oh, it's supposed to be a red, am I? Right, got to put my glasses on first. My name is Steve Waters. I'm a trustee, treasurer and coach of the Canoe Club and also a fender member way back in 1979. I'm also a river warden and I do river fly, otter and water vole surveys, and I'm a citizen science water quality monitor as well. And I'm speaking about the middle mill options now. Replacing the sluice. I believe, like Bob said earlier, that this decision has been taken away from us. Now that the bridge has been repaired and there's thousands of tons of concrete underneath it, the rebuilding of the sluice now is not feasible. It's a missed opportunity for our club. A well-designed sluice could have created a fantastic freestyle feature and a lively water sports centre for the club, for the city, not alone for the club. So we go on to the next option, which is a low dam. This really is the only thing that could work for the club. It would bring the water level up so that we can be able to paddle easier down to Middle Mill. Your question earlier about going from the club down to Middle Mill, at the moment you would be restricted at North Bridge because the safety zone runs from there down to Middle Mill. So you could paddle from the club down to North Bridge, and then it gets quite shallow. So the low dam opportunity, there's cost and space issues, we know, but with proper discussion, these could be resolved. Moving the club is an option that we've been given, but to move the club, which has been on site now for 46 years, and we're working very hard to try and keep us there, the only realistic place to move is behind the cricket club. The club has got a certain standard at the moment with lovely changing room facilities and a big storage area as well. We would need those facilities down behind the cricket club, which I believe probably in a conservation area, having a new clubhouse and storage facilities wouldn't go down very well at all. So really relocation anywhere is not really workable. There's a map in that report to say all these areas, but you look at it, the only realistic place is behind a cricket club. Staying where we are, if we stay, a few practical changes would help. Reed and silt clearances in part of the pool so we can get better access to the water. At the moment, we've got a gap of about 9 foot. We're planning, this could also improve disabled access as well. To clear navigation channel from the club to Middle Mill, including river-friendly features like balms and riffles that support the wildlife, would improve river health as well. And number 3 is portage points around Middle Mill. It's an obstruction in the river. It's not easily passed. You go through sort of lumps of mud on both sides. So portage points would be good at Middle Mill, but also East Gates as well. If they're in there, you could have a continuous route from our club all the way down to the estuary and Brightlandsea, which would be brilliant. And finally, the do nothing or naturalisation option. Naturalisation sounds positive and it's lovely for nature, but when you think of the river has been modified over the years, it's been straightened, and it's not easy to naturalise something like that, particularly when you take into account the high nitrates and phosphates that are in the river and the silt levels. These are caused by farming and sewage treatment works. That leads to very fast reed growth on the river. So what will happen now, we believe, is around from North Bridge down to Middle Mill, if nothing is done, the reeds will just overtake the river and completely block it up. So that would definitely harm wildlife, and our paddling ability would be non-existent. It would be almost like naturalising the Castle Park without doing the gardening. It would just be a complete mess. So in summary, what the club would really like is for us to work with the council in a positive way that will improve the river and benefit the city. We have got a river knowledge of 46 years paddling on it, probably twice a week, So I rest our case, really. Any questions?
Can you just clarify, Steve, what you said about 9 foot access? Is that because the water's dropped, so you have to walk through 9 foot of mud and concrete to get to any water?
It was originally, we had to dig out that 9 foot gap, but there's still about 50 foot of silt that we'd like to get moved so that we can get access to the river. When we try groups out, and that's part of our working hard to get the club active, to get the groups on, you can only put on a person at a time. So that takes about 20 minutes for a group. It's a long time.
And secondly, from me, sorry, but we are examining a complicated matter. Can you just describe to those that don't know, what have you got down at the Lido? I mean, how many boats? You mentioned changing room facilities, because from my memory, there's quite a lot of stuff there.
I'll hand that over to Amanda. She's got all the figures.
Thank you. So at the moment we operate from what was the old pump house down at the Lido. We've got male and female changing, we've got a kitchen area, we've got a club fleet of over 50 boats, all different types of boats to obviously accommodate different styles of kayaking. And the club has always operated, and we've obviously entered the river through what was the old Lido. We can actually see the old Lido area. Where we've had to move, obviously, the silt. So, yeah, it was an absolute ideal location. It's devastating. We had a German kayak school contacted me during the summer, wanted to bring their students over. Yeah, you know, it's absolutely devastating to be in the position that we are. You know, there hasn't been transparency with the liaisons we've had within the council. We're unsure of what permissions were obtained to put such structures into the river. From observations that we've made on the river, it looks very much like a broad-crested weir. And our assumption was made, obviously, because the main job was for the council to repair the bridge for the local residents, and then we find that there is the bridge. But there's obviously a structure being placed within the river now, which causes us huge problems. It is not a structure as a club that we would ever send any of our kayakers over. The right-hand side of the weir has been left with what is potentially, you know, a very dangerous siphon, which again, we would not send our paddlers. What we would be asking the council to do is actually put some safety measures, at least 50 to 100 metres either side of what now is a very, very dangerous structure on the river. And we're concerned that we had the consultants in place. We asked if the club pays for it, and nobody within our list of consultants ever got back to us to say, yes, that's okay, no, it isn't. And what we're left with now is something that is an even bigger problem to us as a club. And, you know, as we'll do, it's an extreme sport. You look at the risk, you minimise the risk, you take advice, you look at how, you know, because while there's water there, it might only be an inch. I can guarantee the city that we will get our boats on there and we will keep looking after that space. But yeah, it's really quite disappointing.
Okay. All right, but my point is, you've got a lot of kit down there, and it's not just as easy. Even if a temporary solution was visually acceptable, it would be quite difficult to relocate.
Yeah. There's a huge amount of kit because of the huge amounts of people that would visit us year after year. So it's not an easy task to move. At the club house is the heart of our club, where you can go, you can sit, you can, if you haven't spoke to someone during that week, you can come down. The parents of the children, they all get together. It is part of that community. So we would be looking at purely a satellite base that would be able to store boats so that we're able to still run our group sessions at one end of the river. And obviously we'll be available for, you know, any people that wish to come to intro sessions on over a weekend. But ultimately we will keep our clubhouse because we need to keep cleaning the river. So if we move from the upper to the lower, what's going to happen to the upper? Because nobody's taking care of the river. So obviously as a conscientious club, we want to make sure that we have the whole run of the river so that we can keep looking after it, cleaning it. Our juniors love finding rubbish. It's a great end to their lesson, who can find the most rubbish, you know, and we're educating these children from really young to take pride in such a wonderful resource. And also, you know, teaching them that not everybody appreciates that. We have to take value in green and blue spaces. I understand the concepts for, you know, these wonderful spaces and all of this money. We do it for free. We coach for free. You know, we clean your spaces for free. So, yeah, we would just like to feel that, you know, that is valued within the council.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank
okay,
you.
I need to hear Orlando now, if that's okay. Orlando Clark.
I live down at the Hive Quay. I'm part of the this community of people that live down there on boats. We're a bit shocked at the moment. Thank you, members of the council. On behalf of Hive Boaters, a residents' association, we've got a crisis of policy at King Edward Quay, forcing us to question the fairness and equity of policies executed under the council's name at the moment. For years, a majority of residents have been responsible stewards of the quay down there. They've removed debris from the river, cultivated plants, installed community art in this neglected part of Colchester. Most critically, our actions have rescued multiple people from the water. It's a community of reliable, contributing citizens, lifesavers, not marginal figures. Despite this service, actions by Colchester City Council's Estates Department have severely eroded trust. A community-led action day aimed at removing residents' improvements was done without any consultation. When residents questioned the failure to install safety equipment, life rings, etc., they were met in writing with the shocking and baseless accusations of they stole them, and this never installed safety equipment, and also that they dumped detritus in the river from their boats. This hostile treatment is damaging community morale down there. However, the paramount threat lies in the proposed changes to the residential licensing regime down there. We're seeing a sudden rigid enforcement of historical clauses dormant for years, creating immediate compliance issues. Compounding this, the council plans a frankly punitive five-fold increase in the annual licence fee for people to live on their own boats down there. They're phasing this over the next 3 years for present residents, but basically if you wanted to move a boat there from January, you're looking at the five-fold increase, which takes you from £50 a year to £250 a year per metre of boats. Some of the boats down there will then be subject to £7,500 a year in licensing fees. And an upfront annual demand of that fee as well, rather than it being payable monthly. It's an unprecedented financial strain. No other residents or council-administered property are expected to absorb a 500% rent increase, pay their entire rent in advance. It contradicts the council's own policy of claiming to support residents during these times of financial hardship. Fundamentally, it contradicts the very spirit of the legislation being introduced in the Renters' Rights Act as well. Most disturbingly, residents who express concern are simply being told to remove their boats, their homes, by the 19th of December, a week before Christmas, moving their families. Basically, people are being placed in immediate danger of homelessness just a week before Christmas. It's been a very callous, non-compassionate approach to housing and residency that the council should really not want to be part of. I just really wanted to say we'd like you to scrutinise the fairness and equity of the policies being applied down there, the manner in which it's being done with absolutely no stakeholder engagement. And we ask you to really to halt these unfair proposals immediately. We would propose a joint working group, as we have done over many years, to find a fair, sustainable solution and move forward to level up this community, rather than present the unnecessary displacement of our vibrant and close-knit community. Thank you.
Thank you, Orlando, for coming to speak. Leader, are you willing to make an undertaking to look into this personally? and you've heard a very, very passionate plea there. Can I leave that with you to make a personal undertaking, to have conversations with these guys, and to share that potentially with me? Is that all right? Thanks, Orlando.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Okay, Daniel Jarman.
Great, thank you. Should have probably printed this out before coming, but there we go. Well, tough one to follow there. Right, so my name's Daniel Jarman. I'm the Estates Officer for Colchester Angling Preservation Society, or better known as CAPS. We're the largest angling club in Colchester and the surrounding area, with around 2,500 local members. We own and lease a dozen lakes in the area, as well as significant stretches of both the River Stour to the north and the River Chelmer to the south of Colchester. Our members contribute in the range of £90,000 to the Environment Agency annually via licence fees. And the income from fishing licences is used to fund vital restoration projects that improve rivers and aquatic habitats. Whilst I sit on the CAPS committee, I'm also here to represent local anglers in general, whose numbers run to a multiple of the CAPS membership locally. I grew up on the Riverside estate fishing the River Colne and share the concerns many have raised here regarding its future. Angling offers significant mental health benefits, with research indicating that regular participation can reduce stress, anxiety and depression, whilst boosting mood and self-esteem. The therapeutic effects stem from the combination of physical activity, social interaction and the immersion in natural blue and green spaces. Given the mental health crisis in the UK, I've suggested it's beneficial not only to anglers, but to the wider community that the Council does all it can to support access to angling provisions. We've been following the issues regarding angling access to the River Colne for some years, and note the absolute lack of progress in reopening the river to anglers. Given that anglers have enjoyed the river for over 100 years, and is one of the most widely supported hobbies in the country, we hope that this can be rectified. With the focus of the Scrutiny Panel on the river regarding its use, I'd like to understand the following points. Given the wide stakeholder outreach of the panel, why have local angling groups not been involved in the process? Also, are you aware of any reason why angling is not permitted on the Colne in Colchester, particularly the council-owned areas? Given your advantageous position in Colchester Council's operations, is there anything you can suggest anglers can do to encourage the council to reopen the Colne for angling? And would the Scrutiny Panel support angling's return on the Colne? I appreciate that this meeting is focused on the Canoe Club, Middle Mill, and on that note, anglers have enjoyed the Colne for decades alongside canoeists, and we're supportive of the Canoe Club and the Council supporting its future success. However, this conversation cannot meaningfully take place without such a significant stakeholder as anglers being involved, and I urge you to do all in your power to ensure the anglers' voice is heard going forwards with regards to the Colne. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And can I just ask, from an angling point of view, do you see an opportunity renaturalising the river and the river being lower, or I'm assuming you'd like it higher? What's the preferred outcome in terms of being able to fish?
Certainly, with regard to the stretch above Middle Mill, like reintroducing the weir, makes sense. The comments made in terms of it not being a natural environment, and the level of nitrates, the reed growth, as we've seen further up, past the old swimming pool Lido area, where significant reed beds establish themselves, and becomes extremely overgrown. Yeah, with regard to the weir, we would be supportive of it being reintroduced.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. Comments heard. Let me now hear from Robert, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Stankham. I'm a former chairman of Fisheries Officer of Paxford's Angling Club. I am a current committee member and have been for 30 years. I have fished the River Colne from Middle Mill Weir to Spring Lane on and off for the last 65 years. During that time span, the river has been at the 900 years level it was before the collapse, removal of the weir and the sluice gates. The fish stocks throughout there are down 90%. One side stream where pike used to spawn is completely dry and choked with weed and vegetation. Nobody knows how the water level has affected the other plants, mammals and birds in this stretch of river. If any of the so-called experts doubt it, then walk the length of it and see what it has become. A muddy ditch which will eventually dry up due to over-abstraction and lack of rainfall. This once wonderful river is in a sorry state now. It needs to be restored to its historical 900-year-old level. The weir sluice should be replaced so future generations can enjoy the river as I have done in the past. Just going on to another little bit that somebody said about what had been added and the concrete across there. There was originally 2 sluice gates and a fixed weir there. Now the sluice gate where the water wheel was is a fair distance, I say a fair distance, 10, 15 foot from the river. Why was that removed? To repair the footbridge, when that could have been left in place, even if it wasn't operational, that could have been left in place to keep the level of the river up. Then you'd only have the cost of replacing across what they've done with either a fixed structure or a movable structure, which is not impossible to do. Though the people that have costed it look like they want a lot of money for nothing, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Robert, thank you for that insight and your experience. Thank you.
No questions?
Not this time. What I'm going to propose is that if members are happy, we take the two councillor contributions and then we break for comfort. And that will give time for us to process where we're going to go. So let's have councillor... Yes, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Could I just... we have a secret... This conversation is mostly been about Middle Mill. The exception was around the quay. Could I just say for the record, Orlando, I'll connect with you afterwards. I'm happy to accept the Chair's request to personally engage myself and have a look at this. But it would be wrong for anybody listening not to understand not only the reality that the Council has to, in its equitable treatment of all tenants and all those with a financial arrangement with it, look to maximise its income. And I say that without meaning to offend, because I heard your words and understood the sentiment behind it. But if I was to leave you with a headline, and again, I know this could be qualified, and we'll have that conversation, my understanding is that there's a huge differential between other marina costs, and it is worth at least acknowledging that. There can well be a debate about the facilities. I've seen that analysis, but what I've just seen this, and it's only an extract, is that the average fee per metre can vary between £310 at Heybridge to £445 at Shotley. I assume these are publicly accessible numbers. They'll be in touch with me, won't they, if they're not. And King Edward Quay is said to be under 56. So whatever the direction and travel, and handling and engagement really do matter, and that's absolutely a point I get, and that I had heard. I have to say I understand the reasons for looking at that differential and how it might, in the interests of others, and our baseline income, and therefore our responsibility to conduct ourselves effectively, that should be looked at. So, but I want to leave that sense of a very big differential which lies behind this.
I've really got to move on, Orlando. I'm sorry. There's so much to do tonight. I'm really sorry. But the leader is going to take a personal undertaking in this area. Okay, let's have Councillor Kafulu. Yeah, you can come up. Let's do it.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start my speech by thanking the officers for tonight's agenda and engaging with a variety of community groups. Moving to my first point, I must express my disappointment that even though Castle Ward councillors have been engaging with community groups and residents associations and assisting residents to have direct meetings with council offices as well as Environment Agency and Essex Wildlife, we were neither approached by the relevant portfolio holder nor briefed or consulted before this meeting. What's worse, this vital meeting came to our attention after a Facebook post shared by Colchester City Council. I believe that excluding or failing to engage with ward councillors on matters that are extremely important to the areas they represent and to their residents is concerning. It is clear to myself that there are legitimate concerns among residents' associations around flood risks, how current changes in water levels may impact infrastructure and foundation of nearby buildings and potential impact on residents' insurances. Linked to this, I want to express my support and endorsement of EXO Environmental's recommendations that the preferred option should not be a simple just do nothing, but be creative about addressing social impact and concerns. We must create and publicize an active river restoration scheme whose activities would include several reassuring action points for residents, including river bank stabilization where appropriate, collaborations on river health surveys, and publications on river health. As a river campaigner who's been testing River Con for river pollution, I welcome Anglian Water's request that both EA and Anglian Water be consulted as they would like to assess impacts on water quality levels and any flood risks. However, I must add that since last year, I noticed and recorded 9 flooding around the East Hill Park, where East Mill Side Sluice staircase was submerged underwater, trees around East Bay were submerged underwater, and on several occasions, river banks and footpaths next to children's playground were flooded. I am concerned that we are not paying much attention to what's happening downstream, and despite sharing my concerns with the EA, I'm worried that in our agenda, East Mill Sluice was not mentioned once. Therefore, as a ward councillor, I would like to ask the Scrutiny Panel to support ward councillors' appeal and ensure that we will have a proper and detailed report on the condition and performance of sluices down the stream, ecological impacts, as well as the status of the river banks. 2. Endorse the creation of an active river restoration scheme and monitor all the ecological changes as recommended by the Colchester Natural History Society. 3. Support residents' associations' requests for additional meetings with EA officers and ensure that reports presented to residents as well as councillors are not full of technical jargon, as having reader-friendly documents and commentaries are essential for developing a well-informed opinion and decision. 4. Request a financial breakdown of ECC's contributions for all the surveys, patrolling, and fences we installed for securing both the bridge and the way. And finally, recommend that Canoe Club and ward councillors receive an extended invitation to all relevant consultations and briefings. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, noted. Just while we're here, so you saw with your own eyes flooding around East Bay, and that's a fixed sluice, isn't it? It's never going to move. It's a fixed structure. Is that right? It can lower.
All depending on water level and water pressure. But what people have got to realise is when the comes in flood and there's a lot of water going over there, if you've got a high tide coming in.
Bob, Bob, we need it on the microphone to be inclusive. But thank you for educating me. I hadn't seen it move, and it's worrying that the area floods, even though it can move. Okay, let's have Councillor Gocher up, please.
Sorry, Chair, I was planning to mention 3 points in my concluding remarks, if it's all right. Sure. The first one is there's a serious typo, which it's in page 172, which describes option D as denaturalized river, where it should read renaturalize. My second point, we should not treat remaining parts of Weir as scraps from demolished derelict buildings. And if council decides to not build a wildlife-friendly weir, we must at least engage with local artists for a reconstructed monument. And lastly, it is disappointing to see that Glee's cost plan was complemented as a valuable starting point for financial planning and feasibility assessment of the weir construction project. 2 years passed, and I believe we should be at the concluding point with full details and evidence available to us, rather than be at the starting point. Once again, thank you for your hospitality, Chair.
Thank you. And on that point about the historic artefacts, it might be that you as ward councillors need to keep an eye on that and have an open conversation. It might well be that there are pots of money out there with particular water heritage organisations, other such pots of money to help with the heritage interpretation of industrial heritage, because I recognise that it's not there at the moment, but I know you'll be diligent and keep on it. Councillor Gocher, please, and then we'll have a toilet break. Councillor Gocher.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gocher, you, like myself, have a very loud voice. For the purposes of lack of distortion, I think pull the microphone a little bit away, or don't be so close to it. I need to be reminded of this myself, but anyway, I'm trying to help you out. Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a weir on this site since Anglo-Saxon times, as Sir Bob has reminded people. When the weir wasn't here, before that, there weren't structures all along, and there wasn't Riverside Estate. So we need to be mindful, I think, of the impact that this is going to have on our residents. One concern that the residents have raised, and I thank officers for the environmental report that I've had a look at, but residents are very concerned about the effect of drying out banks due to lower river causing tree falls. And I'd just like, to know whether that is being scrutinised fully, because residents are telling me that there are trees that are in danger of toppling over because of the drying out of banks. So is that really being looked at and scrutinised properly? Because obviously it's a matter of great concern, partly an issue of safety. Secondly, residents are very concerned about possible risk of flooding, particularly around riverside areas, areas of the Riverside Estate. I've heard before this idea that if there's a high tide and there's problems further down the river, this can impact on Riverside. It was mentioned earlier. Has that been fully scrutinised? I've heard what the Environment Agency have said about river flow, and that the volume of water apparently won't increase going down there. I've heard that from the Environment Agency. But that needs to be put across to our residents in very clear and evidenced way, because it is alarming people who live in parts of Riverside, and they need to know what the evidence is that the flood risk will not increase if the weir is not replaced. In terms of wider ecological issues, my dad was a very keen angler, So was his dad before him. And the one thing I know about anglers is they care about fish. No fish, no fishing. And I'm a bit concerned if people are saying that the number of fish in the river are dropping in certain parts of the river without the weir. And has that been looked into fully? Because that is an ecological issue if there's something that's happening that's causing fish numbers to drop. So please look into that. Another concern our residents do have is the boating lake, because, of course, it was partly filled up and refilled because of plumbing from the raised river because of the weir, and without the weir, the boating lake now sits there dry. I'm aware that it's expensive to keep filling it up, especially when it doesn't look like it's been repointed for years, and there are holes where there are missing bricks. But our residents have a view on this. They have heard rumours, not from me, about other possible uses of the boating lake. They have a view. Please don't ignore our residents or make any hasty decisions on the boating lake without the people who live in the Dutch Quarter, Riverside, Roman and Castle Road, being involved in the decision-making process, please. Thank you.
Quickly, one Councillor Goetsch, because you know the ward better than I do now. In the last 2 years since the sluice collapsing, have Simberley Meadows flooded at all much?
I'm not aware of that. I've not heard that Simberley Meadows has flooded.
Because they certainly used to when the sluice was there. I mean, they are a floodplain after all. But anyway, and the other observation I've got is that in the last couple of years, I haven't seen the level of azolas, that green stuff, is it azola, on the surface, because probably the river's been flowing a bit quicker. And it's a weird one, isn't it? Because the azola was killing the fish when the water was deeper, but it wasn't moving quickly. Now the water's moving quickly, we're just seeing less of that. Anyway, lots to talk about. Let's have a 10-minute comfort break, folks, and then we're going to come back after that. Okay, to Councillor Rowe? To Councillor Goetsch?
To Councillor Goetsch, yeah.
Go on then.
One very quick question. With regards to the boating lake, is there a preference at the moment from what you hear from the residents around what they would like to
Do they
see?
want a splash park or do they want a boating lake? Mark, tell us.
I think the mood I'm getting is they want the boating lake back.
Okay, 10-minute comfort break, please, folks. Lot to get through. Okay, folks, we need to reconvene if we can. Okay, right. Thanks very much for that. Lots to get through. Right, let's have Lee, our officer, coming up to the table. I'm sure you've got a lot of notes, that you've heard lots of issues. We will take the report as read. Okay, we've all read it. Everyone here has read it quite clearly. And if Lee, if you're able to kind of go through the salient parts that you heard from this this audience, and then we'll have questions from members to yourself, if that's okay. In your hands.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. I think fundamentally it's a comprehensive report that we present tonight, and thank you for everybody for taking the time to consider it. You can tell this is complex. The management of the number of stakeholders and competing interests is complex. And fundamentally, our proposal this evening is to continue that conversation. We've now appointed a senior officer, Mel Rundle, in order to pick up that conversation, and the first meeting of this piece is tomorrow. Our recommendation at this stage is to continue that debate with a purposeful view on the canoe club and accommodating some direction of travel and the strategy associated with how we can help them manage their operations. So we recognise they're constricted, and therefore we want to try and support that process.
Great stuff. Okay, and I mean, we've heard from a number of quarters, Lee, around ensuring that all groups are able to be engaged in this process, and quite clearly, if it is the case that the width of the river is narrowing and dropping, then that has an impact on the ability to throw a fishing line and boat at the same time. Anyone can work that one out. I'm good to hear what you've had to say about an open conversation that must continue. I think what I'm observing is we're going to redouble and try a bit harder with engagement. It might be that, you know, just because there's so many people involved that we haven't necessarily chatted with everyone. It's a bit like when I wanted to light up the Roman walls, I didn't quite realise the impact that that would have on moths and other creatures, and, you know, on balance, that wasn't my interest at the time, so I get it. There is other impacts. Let's have questions from members, and let's get into this. Councillor Willits, you've been listening, and I've seen you've been scribbling. What would you like to ask?
Well, Chairman, the issue which is left firmly in my mind, having heard the Have Your Say speakers, is the matter of consultation. And as a scrutiny panel, I mean, we're not here to decide the issue. We're here to look at the process and how decisions have been taken, and are the decisions taken in a good, sound manner, which strikes the right balance between the council and local residents. So. The matter of consultations is always a difficult one, because you know, no matter how you consult, there's always going to be someone who said they weren't consulted. So is it possible, Lee, just to summarise, what was the communication plan for this problem? Because it's been going on for some time. The messages have changed over the course of time, because we've been sitting here sort of a year ago. The issue was getting the public path restored as quickly as possible. Then it moves on to safeguarding the usage which have been established. So what was your communication plan? You know, how did you go out and consult all the people who have a stake in this decision? What assurance do you give us that the views have been properly collated and prepared for Cabinet when they take the decision?
You hear me now? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Willits. Within the report, we've actually specified a complete section around the stakeholder engagement undertaken, but this hasn't been a thorough stakeholder exercise. The exercise that we've been in is following the Cabinet, following scrutiny review in June 2024. There was already a vast array of that engagement piece, so we've taken much of that data to go forward and look at our options. We're now moving into that further stakeholder exercise because we've assessed the options. We've done our due diligence, we've done our financial due diligence. Now we need to drill down into a final decision.
But precisely how are you communicating these issues to all the stakeholders? I mean, is there an officer who's spending their time, you know, making sure that the information is going in and it's coming back and being, synopses are being produced, and they're going to the senior officers who are running the project? I mean, just how is it working? Communications is an ethereal thing, which is very difficult to get your hand around at times. But the impression was that it was not working as well as it should be. And I just don't understand, you know, where the discontinuity is in this process that we think as a council that it's been done well. The stakeholders disagree with that view. So, you know, where have things been going wrong, or in your opinion, have they not been going wrong? Because clearly there's something that is not quite right in the way we've consulted people or not consulted people on this particular project. And I think everyone thinks they've done their best and they've done it well. I think we have to sort of disassociate ourselves from our individual components and try and look at the communication whole and see why residents are disgruntled.
Thank you. So, in essence, the phase that we've been in is an options appraisal phase, not a stakeholder engagement phase. We were using the data, the majority of the data collected from June 2024 Scrutiny Committee, where there was stakeholder engagement. So it wasn't a rehash. We weren't back out there looking to actually put a commitment to it. This was a light touch exercise because the focus of the resources was on the options paper.
I will come back to you, Councillor Willits, and I see others. Lee, could you just give us a flavour of this insinuation that the Essex Highways, who ultimately managed the contractor who rebuilt the bridge, have prejudiced a potential long-term sluice outcome by pouring loads of concrete in across the entire width of the river, as I understand it? Is that, you know, that's an example. Do we know if Highways reached out and to find out that by putting that concrete in, you're no longer going to be able to put a sluice in, or can you put a sluice in? I don't know. I'm not an engineer.
That's fair, thank you. So the designers that completed the reinforcement section of the bridge following collapse have allowed for and designed within the paper that you've received, apologies, I keep touching that, within the paper that you received, a weir. So the original designers for the scheme, which includes this section of concrete, have then come up with one of the options, I think it's option one, with weir. So it's entirely deliverable.
Thank you. Councillor Willits.
The restarting of the canoeing and the impact of the safety zone, could you just elaborate further on how that is working and how you foresee the restoration of the canoeing rights, if indeed that is to occur?
So our colleagues in the Parks Department are undertaking a risk review at the moment using a water specialist. That's so that we can secure independent advice. We acknowledge the fact that the Canoe Club have also got experience in this sector, and I'm sure joining up as much information in the realms of health and safety is as positive as possible. I think that the licence is currently suspended for the Canoe Club for obvious reasons, because something has changed from a health...
Steve, sorry, Steve, we can't have this conversation. Also, it's not inclusive on the microphone. But let's let the officer continue, please.
Thank you. So the licence has been suspended whilst the Parks Department are able to undertake the risk and health and safety risk assessment.
And what are the timescales? Do you have an outline of the timescales for that work to be undertaken and a report for decision?
Thank you. I don't have that to hand, but I can respond to it after the meeting.
No, but Councillor, we can go first, please. Yeah.
Mine's more of a comment, to be honest. A few meetings ago, we discussed the new town and the conversation where members were not consulted about communications that were going out to central government, and I was reminded of that when the castle councillors said that they were not involved with the decision making. So I think this is just an apt reminder that communication to members about things that affect their wards needs to be much better. Because this is a big thing, it's been over the news, it's, you know, it's not a small thing and it affects the city as a whole, but the fact that members weren't consulted or communicated with, allegedly, is an issue, because it goes back to a conversation we've already had in this scrutiny cycle.
Noted, and the leader has heard that as well. I think we all agree, we all know. Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, yes. On the report, under option C, offer the Canoe Club an alternative site, it says that when it comes to stakeholder feedback, no feedback provided. Why was that? Because quite clearly we're hearing the stakeholders from the Canoe Club saying that an alternative site is actually not viable given the amount of equipment, the training facilities, etc., etc., etc.
Thank you. I think this is the next phase that we're talking about in terms of wanting to establish and scope exactly what the needs are of the stakeholders so that we can move forward, because it is complex. And if you look at one of the options, we did a matrix to try and help the decision and analysis. And that option D picks up the fact that we need to go forward scoping what the land requirement and the needs are of the various stakeholders and water users.
In that case, what's written in the report that says no feedback provided should be saying we haven't gone out to feedback on this, because when I read that, I felt that you'd asked the stakeholders and they're not interested. That is very definitely clearly not the case, and I feel that is rather misleading in the way it has been presented to us. I'm sure that wasn't the intention to mislead us, but I do feel that's the case. And I feel from what I've heard that option C, to offer the Canoe Club an alternative site, is not an option that we should be recommending to Cabinet.
No, I mean, the only thing that I've heard this evening is how there's potential scope for a satellite operation, and it might be that that is a temporary solution so that people can get into the water in an easy fashion, because you can't do it now where the main site is. So a satellite as a mid-term solution, but indeed we heard very illustratively the scale of the stuff that's there, the changing facilities for different genders and all the rest of it. So, okay, Councillor Smith, anything else?
No, I say I would just share the concerns I think that Councillor Willits has raised, that consultation has not gone very well on this at all and needs to be significantly improved.
Okay, right, members, who else? I feel like I've had quite a lot of airtime on this one. Okay, Councillor Willits.
I still want to know what's going to happen to the boating lake. And I'm aware that other boating lakes in the West Midlands, where I originate from, are filled by rainwater, not by river water. And I wonder whether there has been any options analysis for patching up the boating lake and getting it into service using a different water source, rather than waiting in ever hope that the river level will rise due to some magical property and refill the boating lake to the pleasure of our children.
Thank you, Councillor Willits. Currently, it's not within my scope as a project to deliver, so unfortunately I've got no information on it, but I'm happy to take it away and report back to you independently.
Whose responsibility is the boating lake and its remedial work? Will it eventually be your work? Is it that it hasn't been handed to you, or is it with someone else elsewhere in the council?
It's not been handed to me as a project, so I believe there is some options being discussed in the background, but it's not immediately within the sphere of my...
Leader.
Shall I suggest, you've got a long agenda. I think the points really been noted that there is a local and a wider interest in this. What I heard then is what I hear is happening, which is that there is a look at the options and choices. It hasn't come through, to my knowledge, for a decision. And given the public interest and the points fairly made about the need to involve people, I'd expect us to be, in the collective wider sense, to be circulating that. So take this away as an action for us. Thank you.
And do we have any indication of the sort of timescales for this? Are we talking about weeks, months or years?
I'd say, from what I've heard, months, but allow me to ensure we come back to the committee with an indication of timetable as well.
And the boating lake is relevant because it was fed by the water when the sluice was there and it's now not there. But if we're not sure if and when there will ever be a return to a sluice, if we're not certain on that, then you know we put people on the moon. We can fill a boating lake. We really can. And I have to say, leader, I think it's one of those things that, because it's a bit like when you take away a bin service, people really notice it. It's a very tranquil part of the castle park all year round. I think it irritates people being abandoned like it is, and I think, you know, let's get it fixed.
We as a council, administration of the day, well, that's us. We have to come with a view on this as early as we can. Now we've got a budgetary process. We have to be mindful of that. The options, as I understand it, are unsurprisingly how much, always a lot, and would it take to fix it, as well as the supplementary question, really relevant, of how do you fill it and keep it filled. Let us take it away as something of public and member interest on which we will have to provide at least an interim indication of where this is going to go, and then take stock of it and put it in the context, say, of the budget. I've got real sympathy with this. I'll add one extra thing, which is the context for me is about how the relationship between commerce and people, the use of the river, the use of the park, how all that works. And as I've been involved in a lot of sensitive conversations around fantastic events we've had, which are a pressure on the park. So this is not just one issue. There's a whole related sense of how we preserve and keep the best we've got. I want to make sure that that's played into that discussion. But simply put, we take the action, we're aware of the action, we're doing work, we'll come back and keep members and the committee silent.
Continuing with this, Chairman, the floodplain downstream, we heard that there were significant concerns about the change of the river level on the trees and the possible impact of water levels affecting the housing on Riverside. Is this being addressed anywhere? We notice it's an issue, but what is the process for identifying our responsibilities in regard to river levels and the impact that it's having or potentially having on the adjacent landowners?
Thank you, Councillor Willits. Essentially, whilst we as Colchester Council own the riverbed, we are not the stakeholders owning the river. So the beds, the vegetation, the marine life, that's all managed by the Environment Agency. Within the report, there is the feedback from the Environment Agency. That's coupled with feedback from a water management specialist called EXO, and EXO have provided recommendations as well to support it. Fundamentally, everybody is embracing the lower water level from an ecology and marine perspective.
So your recommendation for our councillors who have concerns about this is that it's not really us, and we're pointing them in the direction of the Environment Agency rather than us as a council with extensive land holdings in the area.
That's correct. The river is actually managed and controlled by the Environment Agency.
But Chair, if I might add, what's important in the report, Councillor Chris and I were looking at this just a moment ago, is those independent assessments, which are from people with responsibility and knowledge of what should be expected, and the quality and the impact. This is not the first time this has been addressed, I have to say. This was addressed very early when we had the weir craps, you might remember. So I think what I would say to Councillor Willits is, we have heard assurance. I would hear the question again today, ask the team again to see whether there's anything else that needs to be done, but we've had assurance on these issues before. We can take the comms point that was made, I thought well earlier, by Councillor Goetcher, which is the need to get across to residents that those assurances are valid, but we have had them before.
And the upstream floodplain, I'm not sure that really fits into this this particular issue. I mean, there was mention of the ability to fish up as far as Spring Lane, which is sort of beyond the map that we have this evening, Chairman. So it's probably stretching the point to say that the whole of the river levels are an issue. I mean, we see it in clear focus here, but we're aware that if we go up the river a little way as far as Fordham or Argent's Lane in 8 Ash Green, that at times the roads are impassable because of the level of the rivers. Is there any thought to looking not just at this stretch of the river where there is an acute problem caused by the weir, but do we need to look wider at the floodplain management and how it is affecting communities all the way from the Hythe, where we've heard that it's not so flooding, it's cost, but upstream to where there is an impact on local communities due to the river regularly flooding and disrupting traffic movements.
Thank you, Councillor Willits. A, that is outside of the scope of this remit, but B, that's the Environment Agency's responsibility to manage flooding. And as we don't own the riverbed further upstream, that's really not for, in my view, for the officers to be involved.
Thank you. And sort of the final, probably the unpopular comment as a scrutiny panel, where we're to see that the council operates within its agreed budget at all times. There is no budget in this year's financial programme for any of this work to be done. We are now in the point of starting to set, the administration is starting to set its draft budget to bring to us later on in the year. I wonder what the prospects are going to be of finding the sort of money which is being talked about to carry out any of these improvement works without perhaps going out to public subscription. So does the leader have a view on the relative priorities of this compared with the other priorities facing the council?
Cracker of a question, Dennis. I mean, the reality is, and it will be known by all members here, that we'd have to be very thoughtful about making a decision to spend, taking them at their face value, the upper end of these sums of money, because it will be a choice and a pressure. And I'm reflecting to you what you've said, so it's not for me to make that judgment, but my indication would be that I'm clear on my indicator, I think. What I would want us to do, and I think the committee, from talking to you individually and listening to you now and before, would want to do, is trying to find a way in which we reconcile different needs here as much as we're able, to ensure that we keep the condition of the river as best we can and we make it as navigable and usable as possible. Let's take away the discussion and look at the emerging costs and the choices that lie ahead, but that's a collective one. But that's where I kind of see it. We're in a difficult place. A lot of money we could potentially spend, and it will be a consequence.
Do you see any scope for moving some of this remedial work out of the council into perhaps a trust or a public subscription? I mean, there may be a head of steam to restore the mill wheel, which could be done perhaps privately rather than via the council tax.
Mindful of your time, can I just take that away? I mean, we have a great track record in Colchester of, with the help of volunteers for good causes, National Heritage Lottery Fund and others have been able to be helpful, but I'm not seeing a queue here, but let's just note the fair point and see where that takes us.
Well, that discharges my list, Chairman.
Okay, we are going to have to move on. I wonder, and with the help of the Deputy Chairman, if you might help me with a set of words here, but I know that the leaders diligently listened to everyone tonight, but does Scrutiny want to suggest to Cabinet something on the lines of that the situation needs to be continually monitored? Okay, because it's a live one. I mean, we haven't had a tidal surge and a huge downpour at the same time without the sluice there to know, for example. And yes, the Environment Agency is saying it's all right, Gov, Riverside won't flood, but we don't know for sure. So I think we need to monitor the situation. I think we've all heard that we can't wait for a decision on a decision on the sluice to sort out the boating lake. People want that sorted. I heard very clearly remains a portage issue of getting into the water. Now, if the canoe club are not able to access the water properly in their current home, even if we are able to offer a satellite space, can we find a way, is it through Section 106 or something else, to create some wooden portage in Lower Castle Park and potentially down at East Bay? So there's an added bonus to the situation so that the river can be activated and used better. And then finally, just a broader point around widening the list of consultees and having deeper engagement with groups, and that's councillors, residents groups and all those concerned. And then, sorry, one more is does there need to be a piece of work done that's broader than just this small section of the river? Because I'm just not convinced I've got my head around the depth of all of this. And I just keep hearing, 900 years, there has been a man-made, a human intervention at that point in the river, and we are already seeing trees collapsing on the verge. It's obvious that the land is drying out there. So does there need to be a wider piece, leader? So I can't ask you to find 3 million quid. I know I can't. So I'm not going to ask you to find me 3 million quid in the next few months. But I'm asking you to keep this situation live and monitor it. Sorry, is it Councillor Willis? Will you help me out here? You're more articulate and concise than me. Have I captured the spirit of what you're all feeling?
Can I suggest that we recommend to Cabinet that continue to monitor the various environmental impacts of the decision and look particularly at the situation regarding the boating lake and improving access to the river for the canoe club from their existing locations, bearing in mind our budget constraints.
So we're not having a conversation tonight, but I have said widen the consultee list. I did say that needs to happen as part of the ongoing work. So yes, if you felt that you weren't engaged with properly before, you're going to be now. That's for sure. So, Councillor Smith, could for the benefit of the clerk, and do you want to do that for us again?
How far did you get, Owen?
I'll give you what I got down already. I didn't get it all. Continue to monitor the environmental impacts of the decisions taken, to look at the situation regarding the boating lake, and to examine how to support the Colchester Canoe Club. That's all I got to say.
Access to the river. And I think also we should add the point about we expect consultation to be improved.
Communications and consultation. Yeah.
I think that's everything. If you're making that formal recommendation on the basis of my waffling, I will back that up and say let's all support that. Do I see everyone in favour? Yes. I do. Okay. Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you for your time. This is very complicated and ongoing. Thanks so much for everyone for coming along. I know it might feel like you haven't got an immediate win, but trust me, if it wasn't for Scrutiny doing this, we might not even be in this room together tonight. We want to help. We want to see an active river, and we want to balance the needs, sometimes the competing needs of the different parties. Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on, because of the time, and we have to be respectful of officers who need to go home to get up early in the morning. We're not going to overrun by very much tonight. What I'm going to suggest with Councillor Pearson's item, the KPIs, the 6-month KPIs, is I'm prepared to note that report, but what I would say, members, is if you've got specific points you want to drill into, would you mind emailing Councillor Pearson? And Councillor Pearson, if he's so kind, would he mind responding to that email and sharing it with everyone on this panel? And that might be a compromise, because if we take this down the road into another meeting, we're just going to have another late meeting. It's busy times. Councillor Willetts?
Yeah, but will it be possible to have a file note of the questions and answers from Councillor Pearson so that we all know?
I said that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everyone happy with that suggestion? Thank you. Okay. Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, I'd already indicated to you, Chair, that it made sense to me for you to have that last item when you did, because I felt there were enough members of the public that it was more important that that be heard this evening. And I've already indicated to you I'm more than happy to take on board the proposal that you've just suggested.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll then move on to the originally programmed item 12, which is local council tax support scheme, I think. Is that right? We're winning. Okay. Thank you for early sight of this report. Adam, you circulated it early. Do come up, sir.
Evening, members. Conscious of time, but I hope you've all had the opportunity to read the report, and we're making 4 recommendations, proposals to change this scheme for next year, and yeah, happy to take any questions that you may have.
Councillor Willetts. Oh, sorry, no, okay. Any other members? Let's have a look. Councillor Smith.
Yes, there's a note that we're going to be disregarding income from another income source. I recall, I think, that we already exclude some of the war pensions and disability pensions, do we? So we're effectively putting another category into those areas of benefits or compensations that we do not count as part of your income as far as council tax support is concerned.
Are you referring to the armed forces?
I am indeed.
That is already disregarded along with the war pensions, so no change in that regard. No change.
And we're just adding another category to that. Yeah.
That's correct.
There's a slight noise coming from the background. I don't know if it's the volume on the security, but thank you. Okay, Councillor Willetts, did you have any questions on this?
Not really on the scheme. I'm fully supportive of it. What my concern was is we've got 7,100 people of working age who are involved in the scheme, and 3,200 of pensionable age who are involved in the scheme. There is then a most excellent statistical analysis of the response from the 31 people who decided to respond. Now, I believe in consultation. If they've got good points, yes, let's listen to what they have to say. But to do a statistical analysis on 31 out of almost 10,000 suggests that it wasn't the most popular topic, that sort of displaced daytime television and the other football interests and so on of the people involved. And therefore we should... I've always believed, Jem, that there should be a sort of minimum criteria, unless we have more than 10% people responding to a consultation, then but perhaps we don't report it in such great detail, just summarise the salient points which the respondees were making. But that's a personal dislike of mine rather than anything that's wrong with this scheme. It's the way we did it.
Okay, that's an observation around the weighting of the credibility of the feedback. But okay, noted. Anyone else? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. So in regards to 8.2, my question is the new proposed criteria, those who didn't make it on the list, have we considered the expected impacts of this? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I guess it's worth noting that these changes are only going to impact new applicants. So the pre-existing claimants in receipt of benefit will not be impacted by these changes. So it's very difficult to understand the impacts because they're not already in the system, if that makes sense. So anyone that's already on the system will not be impacted unless they have a break in their claim, potentially due to a rise in income, and then that income later drops. They will then be assessed under the new criteria. But it's obviously very difficult to understand what that impact may be. It's in the future and unforeseen. But the changes in criteria are solely for new people coming into the scheme, so will not be impacting current people in receipt of benefit.
Okay, members. I feel like everyone's content with this item.
Absolutely.
And therefore it should go forward for recommendation to Cabinet as you've done. And thank you very much once again for the early circulation of it. That was really good.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you. That closes that item. I'm very sorry that it feels rushed, but we're now moving on to a confidential item. It's a commercially sensitive project, I think, or we're going to do work programme. What are we going to do first? Work programme first. There we go. You have to wait. Sorry, guys. It's been busy, but we've done a good job today. Mr. Clark, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'd love to say my usual, nothing more to report, any questions, but unfortunately, yes, we've got a few things to go through. I think I'll take the easiest one first, if I may, by which I mean we're proposing to move the arts organisations scrutiny item, which was on the agenda for the 27th of January. We're proposing to move that back to the 24th of March meeting, which will be more convenient for them, but also give us more space on the 27th of January for a range of items which have been put forward for potential inclusion, but also in case the panel wishes, Mr. Chairman, to have a second look at the draft budget, it gives us more space there. Hopefully that's the least contentious item I've got. Moving on to potential additions.
I support that, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, if I could, Mr. Chairman, if we could just take a vote on that bit, we can get it out of the way.
Let's
then.
do that. Yes, sorry, go for it.
My only concern about that is that there's been discussions about the funding to arts organisations, potentially in the budget, because obviously we do grants and we've got to save money, and doing it after the budget.
Well, we've locked in a 4-year arrangement, haven't we, on this, Leader?
I think we're getting ahead of a conversation we're going to be having around the draft budget. And I think having a conversation with our arts colleagues at any time will be really valuable. And they are canny, they understand the context and the circumstances we're in. I don't think it will materially change either side of the budget.
Mrs. Braben.
So Scrutiny's role really with the arts is looking at the grant they've already had and what they've done with it and making sure that they've spent that money in the way that they said they were going to spend it. So really your focus should be on how they've spent the money they've had rather than what they're going to do with the money they're going to get in the future, if that's helpful.
Splendid. Okay, Mr. Clark.
Okay, well, I take it that with that question resolved, we're okay to move that to the March agenda. That's great. That'll make things easier. Moving on to the slightly more difficult items, we've had a range of items brought forward and requested for the panel to consider adding to its agenda. We've got one tonight, which is Trinity House, the confidential item that we'll move on to. But for the January meeting, we've had a range of items which I encapsulated in the amended work programme that's published, unfortunately, last night. And apologies to members for such short notice on that. It had been something that had been discussed, but should have gone on to the original version, which was published last week. These items are regarding the sale of commercial investment sites known as R1 and R2, and the sale of commercial investment site known as C3, which I believe are Northern Gateway related. We have colleagues in the room who can put me right if not. Commercial Investment Disposals Programme approval with request for delegated approval authority for Councillor Corey as portfolio holder for resources for individual asset sales. Moving on, a third-party procurement for asset management delivery functions. A request for delegated approval authority for Councillor Corey again as portfolio holder to approve the tender, award and contractor appointment. The Play Parks Programme of Works approval. And finally, one from Tom Taylor that came through yesterday, a request to potentially add the Community Asset Fund to the January. Now, I realise that that's a lot being asked, and I will at this point just remind members that it's very much up to you what goes on the work programme. So these are suggestions, and it's down to the panel members to decide which items they potentially wish to see. So if I could leave that with members to have a consider and ask any questions. If we do have questions about, and I'm really sorry about this microphone, if we do have any questions about the sale of commercial investment sites, commercial investments disposal programme, and third-party procurement for asset management delivery functions items, I think we have colleagues in the room who may be able to shed more light on it than I do, because I don't have that detail, I'm afraid.
I'll just make an observation, because I know the committee will want to think about this, given the pressure of all other business. A lot of this goes through cross-party, in effect, de facto scrutiny, in terms of, are we all in a similar place? It's going to be wrapped up in the budget, which will require the usual mix of spend and, in this case, gathering in money. So all I would observe, and it's here from my perspective, as I understand it, to ensure that you know that you have the choice. You do. We try to avoid, don't we, in this council, called in, what's that? But I think you'll have other opportunities if you're looking at the balance of everything else you do to ensure that there's the right kind of conversation, including, if necessary, and scrutiny as an adjunct to the budget. But that's just a contribution to your conversation, as your call.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Willis, I'll bring to you in a second. I mean, on the play parks one, I mean, it sounds like a good news story, doesn't it? I'm not sure that would need to come here personally. But anyway, Councillor Willis.
I'm not quite sure what the purpose of scrutinising some of these disposal decisions would be. It'd be far more interesting to know what the disposal strategy is under which these various disposals are being made, and to understand the strategy, I think is a fair scrutiny issue, but not looking at each one individually as an individual scrutiny item.
Councillor Smith.
I think we probably would want to look at R1 and R2, given that that's been subject to call interest when the tenders went out for it. So I would think that's going to get called in again if we don't look at it. So I think pre-scrutiny on that one would be important. I'm also interested in the delegated authority to the portfolio holder for the disposal of assets. That seems a very dangerous tool in the wrong hands, and I'm not making any assertions about Councillor Corey, who I've got a great deal of confidence in, but we have to assume that he will not be permanently in that position. Leader, he might want a promotion, for example. I think that's something which we would want to look closely at.
Head of Estates, indeed, Patricia, and Chris Pearson's indicated as well. Go for it. Microphone on, please.
Sorry, is this... Thank you. Evening, everyone. I think the purpose of bringing these forward is around speed in terms of market. So what we've got a mix at the moment of opportunistic things that have come through the door that we hadn't planned, like Trinity House, which we've got on the table for this evening. But we've also got things that we are planning, and we've also got a strategy that we are looking at. The difficulty with moving into a disposals programme is some of this will be subject to market forces, and our governance, and rightly so, is anything from 6 to 8 weeks from the point of writing a cabinet paper to go through estates board, leadership, pre-scrutiny, cabinet. Quite often we're not going to have the luxury of that, and what I wouldn't want is to lose an opportunity. What we will be proposing though for the broader piece is the delegated authority actually to the deputy chief exec and portfolio in consultation with the portfolio holder, but with regular retrospective reporting on the activity so you can actually see what's happening. So the proposition is to come to you with a plan in terms of the commercial portfolio. We've got that in train at the moment, but with the delegation to allow for that activity to progress with reporting back into this meeting or the cabinet. Because to put every single disposal through the whole of the governance, and the governance is absolutely critical. I'm not questioning the need for that, but you operate it. This is a different commercial speed, so that we're not losing any of the opportunities. Because some of these interested parties want to move really quickly. Okay. So it's not about not being transparent at all. It's about balancing the need for scrutiny and transparency with the market that we're looking at. R1 and R2, quite rightly, is about the tender that will be coming in the next couple of weeks, and we've already agreed for that. But some of these disposals may not be as straightforward as Trinity House, and there may be options around, do we accept an offer that's conditional on planning or not conditional on planning, because it has an impact on time through the door of the cash, but also the risk of planning. So there may well be some debate required about some of the decisions, but I'm trying to balance what's going to happen in the market with the speed that we need to move, with actual being able to make sure that we're undertaking the decisions quickly and robustly.
Thank you. I fully understand that. I think it's a paper that we would like to have a look at, because we do have urgency for provisions for where, if we need to put something through, there is an alternative route which requires the consent, I believe, of the chair of scrutiny in consultation with group spokesmen, and that can short-circuit procedures if someone wanders in tomorrow and offers us £2 million for a shed somewhere or the other, but they want to do the deal by Christmas, we can do it. But I would certainly think we'd like to see that paper to ensure there are sufficient safeguards going forward in the future. One only has to think of Thurrock, where decisions were taken without proper scrutiny.
I've got Councillor Pearson, who's been very patient.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that's a really valid and important point that Councillor Smith has just made, and I was going to reinforce that as well. I'd also just wanted to add that the Assets Group has a member group that meets frequently. It includes Councillor Lissimore and/or Councillor Dundas, who often substitutes for her, and Councillor Sunnox, as well as myself and another Labour member, and Councillor Jay, as well as Councillor Corey. So it has 6 members looking at all of the suggestions that are being put forward and will be put forward for almost immediate disposal, if you like. So those 6 members have been reviewing all of our assets in some detail, looking at whether or not we can make something of them to square the circle with our finances. Also recognising that following the discussion earlier this evening from the leader of the council, that with LGR on the horizon, we have a very short window of opportunity to dispose of our assets. We will not have that opportunity from sometime in the autumn next year.
Mrs. Bredman, then Councillor Willis.
Patricia, will you be in a position by this meeting in January to share with scrutiny the strategy, the disposal strategy that you mentioned? Because I think from what Dennis, you were saying, that would be the useful document for, and as part of that, presumably you could paint a picture of some of the assets that we're talking about, and also the strategy around the delegation and how that would work. So maybe rather than have all of these separately, we have one item which is around the strategy. If there's an appendix to that with R1 and R2 that needs a decision, that could be included, and you can kind of tie it all up in that one item. Would
Yeah.
that be helpful?
Yeah, thank you. So we have got that on the suggested piece, so we can wrap all of it into one. That's not a problem, because we had put the strategy on as the request for January. What will be coming to you in December, though, is C3. We can't move that because we will lose that sale. But getting access to agendas is proving really difficult for some of this. So I'm sorry it's all coming in a bundle, but it's just the way this is panning out. But C3 definitely needs a December, and January we can wrap everything else up in one, if that's appropriate.
It looks like everyone is in agreement with that strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Willits, and then we need to move on to Part B.
I'm just inquiring about this particular smoke-filled room that Councillor Pearson was referring to, containing the group leaders and so on. Do they produce minutes of their, because you were describing it as a sort of scrutiny process, do they produce minutes which the scrutiny panel can call to see?
Do you want me to answer that? So it isn't a scrutiny meeting. It is a steering group. It's a non-decision making group. It's an estate member steering group that is a consultation group, I think it's fair to say, that we don't have minutes, but we do have actions. So we can certainly share the actions from those meetings, but they're not minuted because, well, it's a steering group. But very happy to share the terms of reference and the actions log.
I'm sure we'll give serious concern to that particular point, but yeah, I mean, we as a scrutiny panel, we're entitled to see everything, and it's useful to know that if these things are going on, and if we wish to see them, I mean, there must be lots of things going on that we don't wish to see, but it's be reassuring to know that there's a record of the action points, if not the salient details, being kept somewhere should the panel wish to exercise its right.
I think, and I also think the fact that it's cross-party was also to demonstrate the transparency of what we're actually doing.
I mean, it could be routinely copied into the chair of scrutiny. I think all the way through this, I'm thinking that there's just the chair has an extra site you may not get otherwise, but we do risk making a meal of this.
I don't want to make a meal of it, Chairman, but the fact that it's cross-party doesn't mean to say that it's so good and the decision-making is so perfect and it's all done in the interest of the taxpayer. I don't think that is quite right.
I'm going to move this on. It's very late. We do need to have a vote on whether we move into the Part B item. It's a commercially sensitive item, which is why we do need to consider moving into private session. And so I'd like to have that vote, and I would recommend that we do move into private session.
Agreed.
Chair, can I just ask, are we going to get the strategy, which has been, so from what I'm listening, we're going to get the in January, right? Up until that point, we will look at each individual decisions. Part of the strategy will be what you want to achieve from this, and likely the list of assets that will be on any. So therefore, if we then scrutinise the strategy and the list of assets, we won't have to keep coming back to this in the way that we're going to have to do up until January when the strategy comes through. Just as a point of clarification, am I correct in that's what we're proposing?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Perfect, thank you. Okay, we had a vote. We're going to move into private session. Therefore, I have to read out a set of words in accordance with section 100A. Brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 and in accordance with the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements Access to Information England Regulations 2000 as amended, to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting, so that any items containing exempt information, for example confidential, personal, financial or legal advice in Part B of this agenda, printed on paper, can be decided. Exempt information is defined in section 100I and schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1970.